Morning, sir. You don't have to be quiet. It's not a library. You can keep talking. We're just doing some calculations. Hey, how are you? It's not a library. Who's up? All right. All right, here's what we're going to do. We had intended to start with the governing board because of the administrative issues and then move to the executive committee and move up the discussion of the master plan for the benefit of the governing board members. We don't yet have a governing board quorum. So what we'll do is we'll start with the executive committee. We'll go through public comment and some of the issues that are updates. We'll hold the master plan discussion until we have a governing board quorum so that the governing board members can be part of that as well. Any objection to that process? All right, I'm going to call to order then the May 21st, 2025 meeting of the executive committee of the SWA. If you would, Todd, please call the roll.
Executive roll. Chair Ryan.
Present.
Vice Chair Furr.
Here.
Member Shuham. Here. Member Horland. Here. Member Mateo Bowen. Member Dunn. Member Rydell.
Here.
Member Mead. Here. Member Caggiano. Member AJ Ryan. Member Newton. Member Glassman. Member Bright Cruz.
All right, let's go ahead and proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll go to public comment. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, Mr. Cole, if you would, let us know once we get to a governing board quorum so that we can recess the executive committee. Let's begin with public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on any items, please come forward. Do we have anyone signed up? All right, there's no one signed up. Anybody in the audience or online wish to speak on any items, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. All right, meeting minutes of the April 10th business workshop and the April 18th executive committee meeting. Do I have a motion? So moved. Motion by member Rydell, second by member Reed. Any discussion on that composite motion? Go ahead and call, well, go ahead and voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those passed. Executive director report.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming, and we have a very full schedule today, so thank you. Our financial update, let's see, I think Angela, if you might as well just use one of the mics right there. Thanks. Oh, yeah, perfect.
Good morning, Angela Harms with ConResnick, just presenting this financial quickly. The net cash position at the end of April was $1,360,173, and the net assets at $2,985,641. Any questions or?
Okay, any questions from the members? Thank you, Angela.
Okay.
Next item is with regards to the meeting next month. I've been asked to meet because of the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Tampa to move the meeting from the normal date, which would be June 20th, to Wednesday, June 18th. I was just looking for guidance here from the executive committee.
All right, members, go ahead and take a look at your schedule. Again, the move would be from Friday, June 20th to Wednesday, the 18th, right here at the government center. Anyone have any objections or concerns about that date? All right. We'll send you a note so you can be excused from the commission meeting. Okay, all right, perfect.
Address the August date as well. Not sure if we took formal action.
Yeah, we discussed that last time, didn't we? Take care of that?
Yeah. Want to make sure formal action is taken.
All right, let's make sure if we don't do that, let's do that at the next meeting so we have everyone that does.
Yeah, okay.
Put that on the agenda.
Yes,
Okay,
understood.
continue. Subcommittee outreach.
Real quick, subcommittee for outreach and education. That has been scheduled here for June, I believe, 11th. I'm looking at where Steve is right now. What was it, 11th?
For,
The subcommittee meeting.
I think it's a 12.
12th, okay. So we'll get that noticed also. Thank you. We'll have that agenda and everything online here shortly. And the C&D subcommittee also has been scheduled for June, I believe, 17th. Yeah, okay, so member meets, got it. So we are moving forward with that. Those agendas and draft outlines for the meetings will be out within the next few weeks.
To both the members and the public, we know that there have been significant comments on both of these subcommittee items, and so I would invite particularly industry on the C&D to participate and offer ideas in advance or reiterate that which you've emphasized previously. We need to be moving forward expeditiously with that, and I know once we have that subcommittee stood up, working with the county, we can start talking about both regulatory and economic issues related to moving that forward. So thank you for getting that scheduled. Anything further, Executive Director?
No, thank you.
All right. We still don't have quorum on governing board, so let's go to ongoing outreach and education plan. We have a commercial survey update.
Real quick, Haley from Conceptual will be here giving an update with regards to the communication and outreach that is occurring.
Welcome, Haley.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Haley Zagacki from Conceptual Communications. The first item I want to go over is the commercial survey update. We received a total of 135 responses to the commercial survey, and they are being evaluated. We expect to have the report back from RRS in the next week or two. Next item is the promotion of the June outreach meetings. We are heavily promoting the June 16th meeting in Davie and the June 17th meeting in Fort Lauderdale of the draft master plan public outreach meetings. Just like we did for the surveys.
Second, we have the back doors open, so I think it's getting hard for people in the back row to hear. We can hear it perfectly well up here. I don't know if there's a speaker issue on the back here. If you're in the back row, don't treat this like a college class. Come forward, come sit in the front. We won't call on you, so if you want to come closer to be heard, please do so. Go ahead, Haley, I apologize.
No problem. Okay, so just like we did for the surveys, our team created a toolkit with graphics, videos, social media posts, flyers, posters, web, and email copy. And all of these materials have been provided in English, Spanish, and Creole. On May 15th, our team distributed the toolkits to the cities and the county, and we're also distributing the info to all of the local chambers and community groups on our list. As far as paid advertising, we're running an advertising campaign to promote these meetings on Telemundo, Legacy Media, Caribbean National Weekly, and select Creole radio stations, and a few other outlets. We're also running digital ad campaigns on Google and Facebook to promote the meetings, and we will certainly be tracking the RSVPs. For those who can't attend the meetings in person, they will be live streamed on the authority's YouTube channel and via Zoom, and those links will be posted on the authority's website before the meetings. And also for people who can't attend in person, there will be a QR code for live stream viewers to submit their questions, and the meeting recordings will be posted after each meeting. Third item I wanted to update you on was the authority swag. We've been working with Member Dunn, so thank you for your help on this. We've ordered some authority swag, which are all environmentally friendly items that we can have available at these public meetings. And the swag's reusable produce bags, reusable grocery bags, some pencils made from recycled jeans, USB sticks, and reusable cloths that save up to 15 rolls of paper towels. Oh, and also some wildlife seeds. And then last update is the Authority Ambassadors Program with Broward County Public Schools. As you know, we've had some very successful videos going out with students that are both Broward County Public School students and involved with the Museum of Discovery and Science. And we have asked these students if they would like to sign up to be part of an Authority Ambassadors Program. And really the goal with that is that we've also developed a toolkit that your member city can check out in advance of a community event. It has a tablecloth, pull-up banners in multiple languages, a step and repeat, and T-shirts for the volunteers. And the idea is that if your city's having a touch a truck or music in the park, something that's not environmentally focused first, but a lot of your community is going to be there, it would be great to have the authority to have a presence there. So we want you all to be able to check out this toolkit, have a presence there, and have this group of authority ambassadors who are all signing up to be able to come and represent.
Okay, fantastic. I don't know if they just increased the speaker back there. Sorry, now you're getting blown out. A couple things. First, on the toolkits that were distributed to the cities, I think we ought to do a survey to the cities to see which cities have used and then find out a sense of how they've used it and accumulate that information so that we can do two things. One, understand, are the cities actually using these? For the individual governing board members and executive committee members, gives us an opportunity to emphasize if our own city hasn't been. And then two, to have a sense of the best practices on how they're distributing that information so that we can improve it. Second, with respect to the ambassador program, which is a great idea. Again, that's something that needs to be replicated in each city. I'm not entirely sure how that's getting communicated to the cities to be able to give them a very easy decision tree on how to do it, what to do. Obviously, the simpler we can wrap that up in a bow and then say, you know, because most cities have a sustainability or an environmental advisory board. Those of us who have high schools and middle schools in our community have environmental and sustainability clubs. So we have a quick access to it. I love the idea, and I think we all do, of then working with the city management teams to make sure there is an SWA presence through these ambassadors at these events, like you talked about, the truck events, the music events. Let's try to make sure we do that by the next meeting to give everybody time so that when school starts back in August, they're ready to do that. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Member Dunn.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, just forward to all of us the email that you sent to staff with a toolkit so that we can follow up and make sure that they're actually using it. Because as I mentioned, we've had changes in my city. I want to make sure that I amplify it for staff.
And even
Thank
for those
you.
of us who haven't had changes, we need to amplify it for staff. So great idea. Thank you, Member Dunn. Any other questions or comments for Haley? All right. Thanks, Haley. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Do we have any sense of anyone else who's going to be attending from the governing board calling around?
That's, can't use them online.
No,
Have to be in person.
unless there's someone in the audience. Yeah, online doesn't matter.
Okay, let's go ahead and move forward then with the county update that's on the agenda. Any county update? County's got no update. All right, we'll talk about that later. New and old business information material legislative update. Todd?
Actually, Jamie, you were going to talk with regards to the one item.
Yes, it was a very busy legislative session, but not in connection with solid waste. There were about 6 bills that were seriously considered, but only one passed, which was HB 295, which was also SB 200. And it hasn't been signed yet, but it was passed by the legislature. And basically what it does is it directs the Department of Environmental Protection by July 1, 2026 to do a comprehensive waste reduction and recycling plan based on the 75% recycling goal. The plan is required to identify recycling goals. It's directed to include a 3-year plan to implement certain strategies. One is recycling education and outreach. One is local government recycling assistance. One is recyclable materials market development. And then upon completion of the plan, they're required to give it to the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House and include recommendations for any statutory changes necessary to achieve the plan. I don't think this is going to have any major impact on anything that we're doing, but it is the one piece of legislation that was passed that deals with solid waste.
All right, so the upside of it is it's reemphasizing the work that's being done here by the Executive Committee and the Governing Board, the SWA and the county. And we will be well out in front of that July 1, 2026 date, but we look forward to working with the state on it. I noticed that the bill did not address the single-use plastic bags that has been now pending for 15 years of waiting for Senate approval on.
Mr. Chair,
for that.
could I get the bill number again, please?
Sure, Senate Bill 200. And we can provide you, we'll send it around. And HB 295. We'll send that around to everybody on the governing board and the executive committee. You can share it with your staffs. Right now, there won't be any real action to be taken, but it does, again, validate and reemphasize the work that's being done here at the SWA. Any further comments or questions on that? Okay, any other new or old business? All right, we're still one live member short for the governing board. As much as I would like to hold off, do we have anybody coming? All right, anybody online want to jump in the car? Let us know. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll move to the SCS master plan presentation. I think we may need to make a little shift at the table there. For the governing board, there will be. We called the public comment earlier. Okay. But what was the confusion? Because we opened public comment and
She was going to speak. The governor.
yeah, but we started with the executive committee. That's what we announced. Here's what I'm going to, here's what I'm going to do. Hang on. I'm going to give you the latitude to go ahead and speak. Okay. Since you're here frequently and we know that you have comments. So if no objection, I'll allow that public comment. Go ahead. You're going to need a microphone though at the podium. If you like, you can come and sit in between the consultants. All right.
All right, thank
Give us your
you.
name and introduce yourself to the millions at home.
Debbie Green, I'm the Southwest Ranches resident. And I appreciate your allowing me to speak. I also appreciate all the hard work you have all continued to do. Unfortunately, I missed the last few months. I've been dealing with some overwhelming with health issues of my mom. But I really appreciate you all just moving forward. I know there seemed to be a consensus of this board to keep any new incineration out of the master plan. So in looking at the master plan, the draft that's been published, it seems like it's kind of going in that way and that it's recommended scenario A that doesn't include any new incineration or waste to energy at this time. So what I would ask in going through this is to remove at this time from that draft master plan, because that way that there's no, that we just keep it as the current facilities or location. Because what's there is what, based on the recommendation of scenario A, there is enough at that location and we don't need to look further. So I just think I would ask you all just to remove that at this time. The other is the public meetings that are going to be held and the public outreach. When I first saw the meetings, I saw they were all open to public comment, I believe. But now it appears that the meeting on June 11th that's been geared towards elected officials is not allowing public comment, which there's no way, I don't understand. You have a meeting where you have all your elected officials that they're all attending and you're not going to let all your stakeholders and constituents.
There's going to be
speak.
public comment. Don't worry about it. There'll be public comment. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. And the other is, I'm not sure if some of the venue sizes, I don't know all the exact room, but what I'm thinking of, like at Treetops Park, doesn't seem to have a capacity for the amount of residents that I would hope are attending, and I believe will attend. I think this will be a meeting that will be, I think a lot of you know that Pembroke Pines meeting where they couldn't even find enough spaces in all the conference rooms and everything else in addition to their big council chambers. So I would ask that you maybe look for locations that have a capacity, if that you really want to hear from your stakeholders in, throughout Broward County, whether it's the one at Treetops Park or the Fort Lauderdale downtown.
Okay, your time's just about.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Ms. Green. Capacity was an issue that was raised by the executive committee members after the other public meetings, and we'll make sure to double the effort on that. Okay. We're going to have a presentation on the draft master plan, and I want to offer some comments, and then I'll turn it to the co-chair. The draft master plan is the product of accumulated analysis and work. There were 11 separate task white papers that comprise thousands of pages of information as a component of the draft master plan. There's been nearly 18 months work of the executive committee, public meetings of industry and the public itself, workshops, and the individual hard work of the executive committee members who come to each meeting prepared both with questions and analysis that are relevant to the issues. Each of these meetings have been productive and have energized ultimately the draft master plan. As we go forward in considering the draft master plan, I want to point out some issues I think we should consider. While there are recommendations from the consultant, some of these recommendations are aspirational. They're goals. They don't reflect that on day one, they will be implemented as such. And for all of us, it's an opportunity to consider that which may be considered in the future, but it should not hold us from taking action now. For instance, one of the items that has been identified both in scenario A and in the draft master plan was the concept of once a week MSW collection. We know for our individual communities that cannot happen on day one. It is an aspirational goal that if we can divert enough of the MSW collection through the strategies that will be implemented, that ultimately perhaps we could get to that in individual communities, but that will be an individual community decision. The point being that the goal should be to conserve resources and to motivate our community. Second, this effort represents a historic shift in our analysis. For the first time in the history of Broward County, we are looking at solid waste through a zero waste lens. And that lens is a galvanized consensus. We've never seen that before in our community. We are galvanized around the idea of changing behavior and focusing on those strategies that will change behavior, starting at the shelves in our retail. We know that to be successful ultimately in disposal, we have to start at the shelves, at our shopping baskets, and then in our homes and our businesses, from organics to recycling to reusing to all of that which diversifies our effort to divert. No longer is composting a fringe concept. We've heard from schools that have successfully done this and shown the economics of it. Businesses and cities have actively started, and we can begin that now. We need not wait for the master plan to be approved. There's been finally a transparent discussion of where we've fallen short. Construction and demolition debris and bulk and vegetation, we have failed as a community. For the last year, I have emphasized, and others in the executive committee have emphasized, the idea that we must be going after the low-hanging fruit, and no significant action has been taken. We need to accelerate that. The cities and the county need to act as if this is an emergency and act as if it can be done now. Related, we must also do what we can now, and we must reject what we know we will not do in the near term. We must agree that the consensus that we have is, most importantly, that we cannot landfill or burn our way out of this crisis. We must take action. The executive committee has consistently focused on the financial and educational aspects of how we get to that point. And so as we go through the issues, I want to offer some active ideas. Let's start and let's commit immediately to a full education program for the entire community, cross-cultural, across all ages, across all industries, and throughout our residential communities. Not education on what we think we may do in the future, but what we can do now and must do now. Address single-use plastic reduction, harmonizing recycling messaging for consistency across our communities, addressing organic management. We know that we can do this because it is an existential threat, but yet there are opportunities that we have heard from and that exist in our community right now, and emphasize why changing behavior now before the adoption of a master plan is important. Second, urgently, as I said a year ago, and we've said over and over, and in fact, and even interviewing the consultant, we must start meaningful C&D bulk and veg diversion now. That's the low-hanging fruit. We have failed as a community, and we know the data, we know what we need to do. We need legislative and regulatory strategies and a real commitment through flow control, and we can start that now. We also should develop a consensus on what we can or won't do. We know we will not site another landfill in Broward County. I believe there is general consensus that we will not site another WTE facility in Broward County. It's not to say that WTE is not part of a strategy. Waste to energy will remain a strategy, but the idea of siting a new one doesn't seem to be economically, politically, socially, or publicly acceptable, nor is there an appetite to site one. Let's commit to that. Let's send that message so that communities that are on the fence who doubt our commitment to diversion through strategies other than WTE can finally feel comfortable. Let's take off the table that which we won't do. We must begin putting on our marquee for Broward County the industry leaders that have led the initiatives, that have shown the strategic efforts that we want to replicate for diversion. We heard from industry. You can divert and recycle and be profitable. It makes economic sense. We've heard over and over. We've heard from our Florida Panthers. Sorry, I just wanted to say that. City Furniture, the cruise industry, and others about how they've been able to adopt strategies that we can replicate in our communities. We need to spotlight what they're doing, wrap our arms around those industries to help and inspire replication across other industries of these proven strategies in our businesses and our homes. And we must look forward to energizing that which may be emerging technology. We have to acknowledge, and I'll use a quote that was used in the context of AI. As AI progresses over the next 30 years and we look back, as we try to figure out what we were doing to solve problems, we're going to look like a bunch of monkeys in the sand with sticks. That's the technology emerging, and we have to be prepared as a community to accept and adopt those emerging strategies that are proven. Fourth, we must recognize that for all that we have to do, we have to commit to our own shared economic might and strength and prowess as cities. These streams of garbage are commodities. Flow management is our primary strength, not only in achieving the social paramount interests of recycling and diversion, the public policy issues that we face, but in defining our own future economic destinies. We are stronger together, and we know after the RRB, when we were separated, we put ourselves in a position of less strength. It is time for our cities to exert the power we have through flow management and dedicated strategies, while working with the existing available private infrastructure and partnerships, but always being aware that we need to be prepared to initiate our own facilities to protect from monopolistic power, monopolistic efforts, and market vagaries. Fifth, we must commit to not make the mistakes of the past. We must commit to not fail to realize the opportunities that exist. We can never cede our power as communities. We must reject the efforts of market players to divide us to save a few dollars for a short-term political gain. We saw what happened. Never again should we ever abandon our obligation to good stewardship of the resources. We have to be ready to invest in existing and evolving proven technologies and to implement those proven legislative and regulatory and contractual strategies that will get us to our goal. And we should never allow distrust to be reintroduced to eclipse our commitment to each other as cities. There are no doubt many other philosophical and practical ideas that will be discussed by the executive committee and the governing board. But in short, we must simply keep our focus on two issues: diversion of our stream from the landfill and our joint superior economic power when we stay together. I thank the county for its continued effort in the SWA and throughout this process, even as we've had some sharp disagreements. But we must transcend the politics of the moment and of the person to achieve something greater, which is what we have all agreed to do as cities when we worked so hard to bring the ILA together and how hard we've worked across the last 2 years. Now let's begin expeditiously and deliberately to take the ideas we can act on now. Let's start providing a plan for our communities, and let's begin messaging that so that we can galvanize finally our community around the issues of diversion, recycling, reuse, diverting from our landfills, making sure we're doing everything we can as economic and environmental stewards. Thank you. Chair?
Thank you. We've been on this path for a long time, for you and I, almost 10 years now. And I think when we first started, we thought that, as a group, we would probably be building facilities. I don't think we thought the fact that we might be, at least I thought, we would be having to build like state-of-the-art recycling facilities. Turns out we may not have to be doing that. And we may not have to be doing facilities at all. We may be contracting most of this out. And that's okay. That's okay. It's kind of like the Western model of doing business. And I agree with the chair in terms of our strength is flow control. That is, if anybody wants to build anything, they are not going to be able to do it without flow control. If the county is going to stand up a recycling over at the BIC for mulching or for glass or for whatever, they're going to need flow control because it's going to cost money. So that's the reality of it. I take issue with the fact that nothing's being done. I'm looking at an entire evaluation here from HDR on how to stand that up. But the missing element of that is flow control, because the contracts aren't there yet to stand that up. That's what's missing. I think all of us can be pretty proud of what's come out so far of the master plan. It's still got a long ways to go, in my opinion. There's a lot of things that I think we're asked for, particularly on the financials. But it is kind of showing scenarios. I take issue with a few things. I know when we are looking at zero waste, I think all of us have that in mind of trying to divert, reduce all of that as much as we can. But our waste generation study still shows 20% or more will not be recycled, will not be composted, there's no use for it. And somewhere that's got to go. We do have a waste energy plant, and I guess I'm trying to find where we're saying we're doing zero waste while at the same time, how many cities are doing, or part of the global agreement? 19, 18? Kevin, I'm looking at you. 19. 19 of our cities are right now using the waste energy plant. We're still going to be using that. And the reality of that is an old plant. That plant is almost over 30 something years old. to think that we would not be either redoing that one or building something. And now it might make sense to just build, to do another one right there. But to take that out of the equation, I don't think that's smart. I'm sorry. And I'm just going to be out front on that. That is if we want to get to 75% recycling, you don't do it without that. There is no scenario here that does it without that. And part of the HB 295 is talking about getting to 75%. If everybody's read that, the scenario A only gets to 63%, if I'm not mistaken. That's not there. And if you look at, when I think all of us have taken a good look at what other places throughout the world are doing. There have been people leaving from Miami-Dade here, and they've gone to Japan. They've gone to the United Kingdom. They've gone to a lot of places, and they've seen how they do this. And those places do fantastic on recycling. They've got a bin for every different day of the day. Monday it's orange. Tuesday it's blue. It's all the way down. They do a great job. They only get to 51% in the best of all the worlds of recycling. The rest, they do waste energy. And I think if we're looking at, we're not even close to that kind of a mindset that we need to be at. And the emphasis on education cannot be overemphasized. It cannot be overemphasized. And I look to the school board I think that is our beginning, being able to compost all those morning breakfasts and lunches and getting us started. The school that was here in your city, I think it was, that shows a beautiful model. We should be doing that all the way through. But those are the kind of things we have to be looking at and considering. So when we do a master plan, we're going to have to take all that into consideration. And I hesitate having a master plan that takes something off the table that is so obvious, not only here, but everywhere in the world. I don't know how you do that in a place where you have no extra land. Now, I know there's an emphasis here on trying to maybe use trains and take trains to landfills. Let me just say one thing about landfills. And if you look at any hierarchy there is, whether it's the EPA or ours, landfill is at the bottom of the best way to do things. It is not the way to go. It is not Miami-Dade's sending it up there because they don't have a choice. Because their waste energy plant caught fire. And the idea of all you got to do is look at the headlines from St. Lucie or from Fort Pierce. Thousands of tons of Miami trash per day comes to Fort Pierce rail yard, frustrating the locals because they're having trash go right through their front yard, and it smells. And if we want to be doing that, we got to be thinking about it. Right now, they're using the CSX line. Obviously, we might have a better opportunity of going up the US 27. But I am on both SEFTEC. I'm chair of SEFTEC, which is Southeast Florida Transportation Council. And all three counties are on board with trying to do a train up US 27. But all of us all recognize that some of the cities that goes through are some of the poorer cities. And we need to be recognizing that and what that means. I'm also on the Southeast Florida Planning Council. Those are also, they overlap in terms of trying to make this work on a regional basis. I've also talked with both Indian tribes. There's opportunities there. So we need to be looking far across this area and trying to figure out how to do this. I think this draft is a good start. I want to emphasize that all of us, much like when we were writing the ILA, submit our comments in writing so all of us can see each other's comments. This is not the best way to, because you're going to present the draft right now. We're going to have a couple comments here and there. They're going to be off the cuff. That's not good. I hope everybody got from the county the list of technical aspects of what we thought were deficient on the draft, or not deficient, but what still need to be addressed. Okay, we're looking at this as this, we had a scope and sequence of things that needed to be looked at, including financials and stuff. So we put this in writing for everybody to see. And I hope that, okay, Todd, have you already sent that out?
I got it late.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I was not included on the email list. for
Okay,
that one.
okay. So,
It'll be distributed right now.
okay, so my suggestion is all of us do the same thing. Obviously you'll get this later, but that way we get the benefit of seeing each other's thoughts on this. And while we were writing the ILA, we were able to kind of get an overall view of what everybody was thinking. I think that's a good way to do it. Because this is going to take up, this is a solid 3 or 4 month process to try to get to August. And we want to have the best product at the end of this. It is interesting. I'm going to go back to the thought of it, this being a lot of contractual for the SWA. One of the things that held up when we were first writing the ILA was the part of facilities. And if the SWA fell apart and the wind down, it's a lot easier if it's just contractual. And if we are contracting with the county or with waste management or with all the small little businesses that are doing C&D, that may be a very good way to go. And it's something to think about while we're going forward, because that may present us a way to get there quicker and get moving quicker. So but it does require flow control. And, I think if we, we may want to ask as a body for the county to begin working on those regulatory legal aspects so that by August, maybe we've got something that can speak to that. I think it should come, I think from our own legal party, it should be coming from you to say, here's what's probably needed. And then it is handed off to the county to do something like that. With that, I want to thank you for all the work you've done, the consultants. It is quite a body of work. It's a lot of reading. If for all of us, I hope all of us have been doing all the reading, and I hope I know the executive committee has been doing a lot, but we need to emphasize every city needs to be doing this. With that.
All right, thank you. Before we begin, to let everybody know, hang on a second, the governing board, please don't leave. We have a member who is en route, so
Okay.
please don't go anywhere. So we'll shift to that. I do want to address just a couple real quick points. I share the co-chair view that WTE remains a strategy. It must be a strategy in what we do. What I don't believe is that there's any political economic will to go locate this at some new site. We've already lost one site because the county needed to move forward on Monarch Hill. We have one existing site. What we do at that site, what we do together with the partners there, that should be our emphasis, and we should commit to that. With respect to the issue of what we can do, should be doing, I'll say it again. A full year ago, I raised C&D bulk and veg. The industry raised regulatory ideas on what to do on this. We have not moved forward in a meaningful way. I accept the invitation from the county to begin that process of what regulatory and or contractual looks like. That will be part of the effort of the C&D committee that will be probably reaching beyond just construction and demolition. And we need the help of the industry to make those proposals as rapidly as possible. We cannot wait for the end of this process. Finally, as was emphasized, I think there is absolute unanimity. Education needs to begin. We need to commit to that funding, even if we don't know exactly where we're going or what we're doing on the issues that are important, can begin And I thank Haley for her outline of some of the work that's being done. We need to, in our own individual cities, not just rely on the SWA, but we need to, as Member Dunn and others have emphasized, we need to go back to our own cities and say, what are you doing to meet these efforts and extras? Member Mateo Bone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, we are providing comments right now, right? We are doing that after the presentation. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you to you and your team. I know this is a cumbersome and very big undertaking, and I appreciate your patience and really making sure all of our comments was included in this master plan. And to the chair and vice chair, I truly appreciate your comments. I think there is alignment there, but there is, to me, some concerns that I think that we should be addressing.
Let me ask you this, Member
Yep.
Mateo Bone. I think a lot of people will have. I was just providing introductory comments.
Oh, okay.
So if you're willing to hold those,
Absolutely.
let's have the plan, and then I'll make sure that you're first up on those comments. Okay. If we can, Daniel, the floor is yours. And then we'll open up to member comments. Once we have, I would like to not interrupt this process, even with the appearance of the additional governing board members. So I would ask if any governing board member needs to leave, please let me know so that I can recess the executive committee. I want to keep this process moving forward. We have important business to do on the governing board side, but I don't want to interrupt the flow of what's happening here. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Chair, Vice Chair, Executive Director, Authority Council, members of the Governing Board and Executive Committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present an overview of the draft master plan. As was alluded to, there was a lot of work over the last year. It is thick, and by design, this presentation of the draft master plan is intended to really capture the essential elements with all of the detail provided as appendices from each of those white papers. So we're going to cover quite a few items today. It's going to skip like stones, but again, the intention is to provide highlights and in preparation for the various public meetings and workshops that will be occurring over the next month. We welcome your feedback. We welcome the discussion today. And like the Vice Chair indicated, to the extent that you can also provide comments in writing, direct those to the Executive Director, that will help us ultimately be better prepared for the public workshops and finalizing this master plan.
Be there, Daniel. To Mr. Cole and to Mr. Storti, it's going to be important as my co-chair outlined, is that we get to see all those comments. We need to be able to incorporate those. So Mr. Cole, just as we move forward, let's make sure that we're giving the appropriate authority to Mr. Storti to share those, understanding it's not a sunshine violation, but they need to be shared in real time. Thank you.
Okay. Nate, again, for the record, my name is Daniel Deitch. I'm joined by our colleague, Travis Barnes. You may notice that there's an empty seat and a picture of a colleague who's not here. Unfortunately, she is under the weather and sends her regrets. But we've been working collaboratively as a team. So it is a combination of SES engineers, Resource Recycling Systems, Arcadis, and Mercury, bringing different skill sets and complementary skill sets to the table, working through the various white papers as we're driving towards this master plan. So if there's one slide that I want to emphasize more than all others, is that where we're at today is not sufficient. Meaning that with all the recycling credits, we're at 39% as a county with recycling. The articulated goal was 75%. Reference was made that with option or scenario A that we'll be talking about, that in and of itself does not get us to 75%. The way that we've approached this is that it's building blocks. This is, we've shared previously, this is not a light switch kind of project. That you agree on the strategy and all of a sudden you're at the end state. This is going to be evolutionary. And we want to make sure that the plan, the strategy is flexible, adaptable, it reflects both your input as elected officials as well as the community, and recognizes that we can't know all of the potentialities, but we can provide a framework that we can be unified around so that we're adaptable as conditions change. To that extent, we've identified some enduring principles that are common themes that run through our analysis and the feedback that we've received. We know that behavior change is really at the top. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the zero waste lens. We're not going to facilitate our way out of this. Everybody has a responsibility at every level of our community, but it starts at the home. It continues at the business, and there's a lot of policies that we collectively can recommend and you can implement so that you can gently nudge people to make different decisions, hopefully better decisions, to change the paradigm from one of disposal to one of resource management. It's been said in the opening statement, the economies of scale provide tremendous benefits to the authority. It unlocks opportunities, both in terms of financial stability, but also the engagement with the existing service providers, leveraging the infrastructure that already exists in the county. Harmonizing services is something that we've talked about, both in terms of guiding principles, but also clarity. Right? We live in a mobile society. People are moving from community to community. Broward County is, I'm going to say, a tourist-based community. You have an influx, a tremendous influx of people every day that are coming through for the natural beauty, the attractions, through the airport, through the seaport, and consistency of message and level and quality of service are essential. We know that environmental justice and equity is a tremendous consideration. Particularly when we're thinking about the kinds of facilities where and what they're processing and the proximity to folks and the impact on the environment. And lastly, as I mentioned, it's tied to economies of scale. We need financial stability. Right? It doesn't benefit anybody to have a low cost initially and a high cost in the future. We want to make sure that the strategy effectively reinforces that point and assures you the financial stability, which is part of the reason that we looked at a long planning horizon. There's less clarity 40 years out, but we're not losing sight of it. So a lot of our focus is what can we do today so that this strategy is action oriented and maintain the flexibility to adjust to the conditions. So what are some of the essential elements of getting to 75%? Well, the education and outreach. I think we're all in agreement on the importance of that, the consistency of that message. So in part, so that we can use that to help people understand opportunities to minimize waste. I'm going to share some facts and figures with you a little bit later in the presentation. A lot of waste is generated in Broward County. It's a very dense and populous county, and there is a lot of waste that needs to be managed. There's a lot of leverage that you can pull with policies and regulations. It's been said that we can leverage the existing infrastructure in the short term. And while I'm sensitive to the comment that was made about at this time, but we believe that it's prudent to keep options open in the future, because if we're not successful as a body in changing behaviors, the waste is still going to need to be managed. But let's give it our best effort right out of the gate to change behaviors. Again, leveraging the infrastructure, focusing on the traditional recycling materials. You have a facility that is or a new facility that is being built. There is not currently access to single stream recycling in all communities. We want to make sure that that is achieved and that we utilize the existing infrastructure. It's not appropriate to start out of the gate to start competing in an area that is already being satisfied within the county. But we know that there's an opportunity for greater participation that will lead to greater tonnage and starting to peel off some of the waste that's currently not being beneficially used. It was stated earlier, the tremendous opportunity for organics management. And I want to thank the industry that's been showing up to the various meetings over the past year and participated in the industry outreach event. There is interest in managing that material. And when we look at the waste stream components, we know that we can do better, starting with, again, building blocks, starting with taking yard trash and mulching it, with the aspirational goal to start focusing on the food waste, pre and post plate food waste, whether it's generated at home or in businesses and industry. Construction and demolition debris management, right? We've heard the term, and you're going to hear it again, low-hanging fruit. That is a tremendous opportunity. And from a measurement standpoint, that is the heaviest component of the waste stream. So it really does move the needle, and it represents a tremendous opportunity. Even if we do all the right things as quickly as possible, we still have a long-term disposal need. We know that we're limited within the county. The likelihood of a new landfill in Broward County is approaching zero. So we have to be mindful of that dynamic between reducing the amount of waste that's generated, beneficially using the resources so that we have a smaller amount of waste at the end of the day that will be need to be managed. And the other is innovative technology adoption. Data is king. Right now, systems are not connected. The waste industry is moving in this direction. They are the adopters because it makes economic sense for them, just like it will make economic sense for you. Whether you're outsourcing services or not, having that data will inform future policy decisions and optimizing the system. And we believe that there is a clear pathway between where we are today and getting to 75%. It is going to take all of us working together to get there. And at the end of the day, I just ask that you consider that you may not all get what you want. We hope that everybody gets something, but this falls into the realm of the common good. And we know that working together will yield better outcomes. All right, quick project overview and objectives. I just want to be crystal clear that this master plan is a strategic plan. We get into tactics. We have recommendations that look at specific actions, but the overarching purpose of this is a strategic plan, and we hope that we can achieve consensus on the recommendations and then quickly move into the tactical elements of it. And we're already seeing movement in that regard. As I mentioned, we're approaching this with a zero waste lens, which is not a series of facilities. It really is changing mindset and changing behaviors. And that informs the recommendations that are in this master plan. And as I mentioned, we are looking out over the horizon. We have greater certainty over the near term, but we can't lose sight of the long term. And different decisions will be required at different points. The zero waste lens, that is aspirational. And that, again, that's why we want to leave the door open, because if the hoped behavior changes and practical changes don't occur, you're still going to have a lot of waste that's going to need to be managed. And we should be clear-eyed about what the options are to use facilities to help bridge that gap between the as-is conditions and the desired outcomes. Okay, I just want to walk everybody through what this engagement looked like for us and hopefully look like for you. There were a number of tasks. Each task had a deliverable or deliverables. We have, in our efforts to be transparent and inclusive, drafts have been shared with the executive committee, the governing board, and TAC, and made available to the general public. There is a mechanism on the authority's website to submit feedback. That is still open. We welcome that feedback. We review it, we digest it, and it informs our review. We have lots of conversations with the executive director to make sure that the information that is relevant to our work is being addressed, and that which is relevant to your individual municipalities is being conveyed to you so that you can address it as well. The master planning process was a series of white papers that were building blocks. While they're discrete assignments, there's a lot of interconnectedness between them. So first, we had to establish where are we today. Took a lot of work, a lot of time. I thank you all for your contributions because it really made a difference to have good quality information and data to build upon. We looked at the financial overviews, a comparison of different counties and different cost structures, and also information about flow control and the value of having that in terms of changing the options that are available to you. And there was a presentation at our last executive committee meeting that presented a lot of the considerations within that. I know, and I appreciate the feedback from the vice chair about the ILA, the connection between the ILA and the master plan. We will be able to address the financial questions. We're just not there yet. We need some policy direction, and then we're very excited to carry that forward and paint a more fuller picture or landscape for you. Really thought one of the most substantial pieces of the master planning process was the future needs assessment. And that looked at, really from an academic standpoint, what kinds of facilities would be necessary to achieve the outcomes. There are a lot of considerations. There is no perfect solution, which is why we created scenarios, and my colleague is going to be discussing those with you a little bit later on. And you collectively have provided feedback to start with scenario A as the foundation and the building blocks, and we'll get into more of that in a bit. We did a deep dive into regulatory requirements and policy review. I'll provide some highlights of that a little later on in the presentation, which then led to, well, there's still some other tasks that are related. So this is not quite in order, but recommendations and findings and the implementation plan and timeline. So those were the last two white papers that were prepared leading into the master plan, and those are incorporated in the presentation today. And earlier in the project, we focused on education and outreach and those best practices. What is successful in other communities around the country and around the world? It was encapsulated in that white paper, which was then used to inform the development of a communication plan that was shared with you many months ago, which I think ultimately led to the subcommittee that focuses on that. We think that's a great approach. We did a deep dive into innovative and future technologies, which is coming up a lot faster than we imagined. And we wanted to balance that with what is practical for the authority and what we want to keep an eye out on in the future. When we talk about guiding principles, some of the feedback that was provided to us was to make sure that we're focused in the short term on proven commercial technologies. Which doesn't mean that we're not keeping our eye on emerging technologies, but you can't hang your hat or take the risk of a technology that is not operating in a commercial fashion. But it also looks at data management. As I mentioned earlier, data is king, and we want to make sure that whichever direction you go, you appreciate the interconnectedness of that data and how that data can be converted into knowledge. We also looked at highlighting the natural areas near facilities. And the idea is, how do you extend the engagement with the general public by activating potential sites? All of that has come together into the preparation of this draft master plan, including the first public workshop that we had back in September. This master plan will also be informed by the 4 public workshops that are planned in early June. All of that will be considered, deliberated, hopefully with this body, and ultimately conveyed to us through the executive director so that we can revise and prepare and issue a master plan. I do want to share with you that the draft master plan that was presented to you is still a thick document. We recognize that. Our intention for the final master plan is to be a graphics-driven, very easily digestible document that is substantially shorter than what was presented to you a week ago. All of the backup information is still there, but we want you to be able to communicate the essential elements of this plan, of this strategy, in a way that is easily digestible. Right? You've all been through a boot camp on solid waste over the past year, some perhaps even longer. But we know that not everybody lives in this world, especially the general public. And in order to help them understand why the behavior change is needed, they have to be able to understand and digest the concepts. And then there are a few additional tasks that will follow the preparation of the master plan. And as you know, we've been tasked with a number of items through the contingency task that both focus on surveying and engagement and outreach. We've had a number of workshops and a number of additional white papers at your request, and hopefully we've met your needs with that. All right, so here's our staggering slide. We've got a population of about 2 million people, and we are generating, it says collective, but really it's generating about 5 million tons of garbage a year. That's a lot. We're a very dense county, and we know that there are opportunities to start to minimize the amount of waste that's generated and beneficially use a lot of the components that are currently either being combusted or disposed. The good news is you're currently recycling about 1.5 million tons of recyclables. That's made up of 2 categories per the state, and I should say that this is based on the last report to the state of Florida from the county. But there's 2 categories: certified recycled tons and non-certified tons, and they make up the approximate 1.5 million. There is an adjusted recycling rate. I will say that it is somewhat fuzzy math because you're gaining some recycling credits for what is being combusted. But still, at the end of the day, even with the 500,000 tons or so of waste that is combusted, you have almost 3 million tons that's going to a landfill. Much of that is out of the county, and that's going to change as the conditions of Monarch change as well. So in terms of the waste stream, this was from a different assignment that we were involved with for the county. There is tremendous opportunity. That's what this shows me. Whether you look at residential waste or commercial waste, even though the recycling rate is relatively low in each sector, the compostable material is not being tapped. We've heard from industry, there is interest. We've heard from the public, there is interest. This plan presents you with options to capitalize on that. There's also a number of portions of the waste stream that are potentially divertible, and we think that through this plan, we can also capture that. So on the residential side, nearly 80% is recyclable, compostable, or potentially divertible. On the commercial side, nearly 76%. We talked about earlier the low-hanging fruit, the C and D. There are tremendous opportunities there. And I don't think that we're starting at zero. There is a lot of existing infrastructure that can manage it. I know the county's taken a hard look at how they can improve their operations at their facility. But nearly 80% of the C and D stream is recyclable, and we can capitalize on that. But I'm going to say it again, I may say it even more throughout this presentation, you still need a landfill. There is still going to be a portion of the waste stream that does not yet have a beneficial use. This is simply a graphic to show sort of the structure of this body, that the authority is comprised of the governing board and the executive committee with an executive director and council. There will eventually be, I guess now there are, and hopefully there will be more subcommittees that support it, TAC as well. But basically your customers fall into 1 or 2 categories, either residential or non-residential or commercial or industrial. We've simply broken out on the bottom the communities by the categories through the ILA in terms of large, medium, and small. So we're excited, as the chair mentioned earlier, after more than a decade of fragmentation, this authority reestablishes the much needed regional governance framework. It allows for leveraging economies of scale, coordinating investments, harmonizing policies, and speaking with a unified voice when facing whether they're local, statewide, national policy challenges and opportunities. So we started this engagement sharing our thoughts on some guiding principles. And essentially what this does is it helps us, and hopefully helps you, frame the analysis. When we presented them, we were given guidance, consensus, that top of them was controlling your solid waste management destiny. And that really informed the development of the strategy. And just because we're not recommending a lot of new infrastructure out of the gate, that doesn't mean that you're delegating your responsibility, that we're clear-eyed on the risks. But there are lots of ways to get there, lots of mechanisms to manage or mitigate risk, even through contracting or outsourcing the services. Again, we approach this with a zero waste focus. We're keenly aware of the environmental and growth management compliance requirements, focused on a long-term disposal solution. Again, we focused on commercially proven technologies, but in our evaluation, we looked at a range of technologies and used this as a screening mechanism to identify those that are ready for prime time. We know that you are duty-bound to your constituents to provide operational excellence, and we believe that harmonizing services county-wide is a critical success factor. And ultimately, while this may not be the low-cost solution, we're hopeful that you see that it's a best value solution. These are, while we talk about the recycling components as commodities, this is not commodity service. This is an essential service that you as electeds are responsible to provide in your community. And we hope that by giving us the guidance of focusing on value, which doesn't mean we're not mindful of cost, but that is embedded in the recommendations of this plan. There were some key policy decisions also that helped frame our analysis. We were looking at a 40-year planning horizon, although we looked at it during discrete pieces, but understanding using, again, engineering principles to project population and growth in terms of the waste stream components, because there is a correlation between population and waste generation, that we captured really what the future needs may be 40 years out and solutions to help get there. We recognize that out-of-county disposal must be considered, but it also presents opportunities for intergovernmental partnerships. We're guided to consider maximizing the use of existing infrastructure. While we're not at the mechanism, we have not yet determined the mechanism for recovering the cost of the services. We know that it has to recover the full cost of the services, and we'll touch on some of the mechanisms a little bit later. In terms of proximity of any solid waste facility, you provided us guidance in terms of buffers, and that was considered in the evaluation of the county-owned and municipally owned sites. And then lastly, consider mandatory approaches to commercial recycling and C&D, and that was embedded in various white papers that presented options to you. So as we were performing this work and through our deliberations, there were some essential themes or takeaways that really emerged, and I hope they are not surprise to anybody, but central to this strategy is behavior change. We're not going to get there without behavior change. Right? We want to maximize engagement, maximize participation, and we know that that will lead to better decisions at the point of generation, so that the appropriate material can be managed responsibly, minimize the amount of waste that needs to be disposed of. We've touched on it many times, and we're going to talk about it more: economies of scale. That provides so many benefits to the authority in terms of providing stability and leveraging the collective buying power for the essential services. through this project, we hope that you've come to appreciate the amount and extent of existing infrastructure within the county. With the exception of landfills, you really have everything that you need in the short term to manage the waste stream as it exists today. And of course, the value of harmonizing services, it provides consistency. So hopefully you all remember seeing this graphic. It identifies the geographic distribution and both ownership and type of recycling facility. As you can imagine, some of these facilities that are classified as material recovery facilities also perform other functions. So they're in the white papers. There is excruciating detail about what is managed at each site. Going forward, for the benefit of the public discussions, the public workshops, we will be adding icons to this so that it's clear what materials are managed at each site. But still, for the purposes of today, the takeaway is that there is ample existing infrastructure. It has generally good geographic distribution. And one of the lenses that we looked at is how do we meet the needs of the county in terms of northern areas, central areas, and southern areas, and also the east-west distribution. So in terms of the regulatory and policy framework, we know that preemption remains a challenge, but it is not insurmountable. We can still work collectively to help change existing policies, but also we know that you still have a lot of tools in your toolkit, whether it's disposal bans, mandates, opportunities for public-private partnerships, embedding performance standards and contracts. If you contract for services, you have the opportunity as municipal leaders within your respective communities and working together to implement purchasing programs and related policies so that you can lead by example. And lastly, material bans. So we focused on C&D, but there's also opportunities to have legislation related to maximizing recycling. In terms of the financial framework, again, we're not there yet, but we're going to get there. But this presents some ideas that really is picking up on the presentation at our last workshop. We will be talking about flow control options. For our purposes, flow control is a success factor for the authority to move forward with the strategy as it's laid out. There are multiple ways to get there. My understanding is there'll be a much more detailed presentation at the next executive committee meeting that talks about the regulatory, contractual, and economic mechanisms that are available to you. But that's a short-term decision that needs to be made. Really, that sort of ties the authority members together in a unique and important way at the very beginning, and it starts to unlock opportunities that are presented in the strategy. In terms of short-term funding mechanisms, there could be host fees, tipping fee surcharges. Those really will endure over the life of the authority. If you decide that you're going to invest in facilities, there are tipping fees themselves that can help generate. If you decide that the existing recycling infrastructure is not appropriate or it is not adequate, we can also talk about the impact of material sales, the commodity value that can help offset the costs. But ultimately, we've got to find a way that is economically sustainable. Right. And we've had a lot of conversations about cost over the past year, and we know that it's top of mind. And ultimately, going out into the future, there may be opportunities for product sales, specifically if you're managing yard trash, the tipping fees, and all of the other mechanisms that were previously described.
Hey, excuse me. Good morning, everyone. So as a reminder, I'm Travis Barnes. I'm a senior consultant with Resource Recycling Systems, also known as RRS. And I'll just say I really appreciate the engagement and participation throughout this process. You are at a critical point in your future, and there's a great opportunity to really lead the state. I say that having been a practitioner for the past 13 years. I worked over in city of Tampa and then Hillsborough County as a former division director in their solid waste department. So I wrestled with these same issues that y'all are facing with increasing population and the challenges that it poses to our solid waste systems. And I'll just state that, with this plan, I think there's a great opportunity to really put us on a strategic path forward. And I'm excited to be a part of it. So as part of the master plan development, the Task 9 white paper really focused on innovation and the technologies that are out there. We looked at all advances that are available currently right now and being deployed across North America and really internationally, not only looking at facilities, but also types of hardware, software. So I encourage you to really read through that because we're at a critical point in time that there's rapidly changing technology, as we're all aware. And we do discuss the impacts of AI and other emerging technologies within that white paper. But for the purposes of how we move forward today, we really wanted to focus on things that were proven technologies, low risk, and that we could put our hats on and say, this is a sound investment, sound way to move forward, with realizing that the county and the authority really need to focus on keeping an eye to the future, using data to best inform our processes, seek continuous improvement and increase efficiency. One of the key takeaways, and we've got some recommendations later with this though, is that the interconnectivity of our systems, meaning our communication systems, our customer service interfaces, as well as the technology that's on the collection vehicles and within the various facilities, are starting to really have that synergy where they can talk in real time across each other. And that is going to create tremendous opportunities to be able to provide better service delivery, more responsive service delivery, enhanced customer service, and to hopefully use all of that data to make informed decisions moving forward. And so as a planning framework, we really want to lay the foundation that there is a lot that's happening. We need to keep an eye on it, but at the same time, we've got to be really smart using taxpayer and ratepayer money today moving forward. And so when we get into some of the scenarios that we put forth, noticeably, there's some out there that you all may have been approached by lots of companies that are seeking to do a variety of different things. However, we'll caution there's lots of failures in that space, and we can't recommend something that hasn't been commercially viable and working as intended for at least a year was kind of the frame that we looked at some of this through. Oh yeah, thanks. So we've said it and we'll say it over and over again, and in the future we'll say it over and over again. The communities that really are approaching achieving higher waste diversion and zero waste have communities and the business community that are invested in that. They value that and they make their daily lives slightly different in terms of how they manage their waste streams. It was brought up earlier, some of the other countries that are potentially further ahead on this front than us. I've got a colleague that's in Japan right now, studying what they're doing and living there for a while. She gave us an example of the information that a new tenant gets, and it's like a small book that they're expected to have their resident to not only learn and be familiar with, but do it correctly, or you will get fined if you don't do it right. I think we acknowledge we're not quite there yet, and that will take time. So for those that want to see zero waste happen immediately, know that those communities have been working on that for a very long time to get to that point. And it's something we've got to strive to do, but it will be incremental to get there. And we've got to change our mindset, not only of what we can do on a personal basis, but also what is the role of the authority and local governments in enforcing what is good for the, the common good. The key takeaways from task 8, the white paper on the education and outreach, is that really you've got to have access to services. And that means that everyone has the ability to conveniently participate in waste diversion programs. So whether that is new food waste composting that may come later, their curbside recycling, at away from home recycling, whether it's at the beaches or the public spaces, all of that matters into getting you to make that becomes your habit, right? On every time you've got a piece of waste, you're thinking about it. When you start to consume things, you're thinking about it. And so having access to services and harmonizing that access is something that will be critical for the authority to do. You also have to have knowledge on how to properly participate. I think you all as elected officials are probably keenly aware there is somewhat of a growing distrust with recycling in the US because of some of the failures in our system and some of the newspaper articles and other things that are out there. I would argue that recycling is successful. It's very important to get those commodities back into the economy and not into a landfill. However, people have to feel confident in that they're making the right decisions, or they can feel confused, disenfranchised, and kind of tune out of the process. And so having access to it is critical, but also having the knowledge to feel like they are empowered to make the right decision. And then ultimately, we'll also see that having that access and the knowledge doesn't necessarily translate into the behavior change that we all want to see or at the scale that we would like to see, right? We want people to always recycle that aluminum can, even if it means there's not one there, maybe they got to take it in their car because they're a 5-minute drive to get home, right? Those are the types of examples that may seem trivial, but really when we're doing that of a population of your community, it adds up to a tremendous amount of waste that goes into the right place. And so we talked about having the ability to become the trusted voice within the community and how to activate other collaborative partnerships, whether it be with potentially the Florida Panthers or the school district or some of the communities that came and spoke to us earlier about how you can access their sphere of influence and reach people where they're at. So whether they're at a sports game or whether they're at school or whether they're at a business, they have an opportunity and they see that those businesses and those organizations are in alignment with the value that you want. And there's some great case studies within the Task 8 white paper that really get to that. And so I just would say that, the standardization of the services that we're talking about, the minimum service levels at the curb is going to be essential to really get that access there. But there's still a lot of work to do on how to harmonize the information that's going out across all the communities, try to get on the same page with some of those deliverables, and to really have a unified voice on to where to go to find the most accurate information. And there's some good examples that we provided for that and some success that's been done in other areas of the state. Including back in Hillsborough County, a program I started that's been adopted also in Orange County area. And so there's some things that we can do, to Chair Ryan's point, more quickly that can get us on the same page, even while it takes a while to harmonize those service levels. So the Task 4 white paper, the future needs assessment, really dove into in detail, what would it take to achieve 75% recycling rate in the year 2045. So that's the kind of the snapshot of where it's still long-term, but more immediate than the 40-year planning horizon. And as Daniel said, I kind of hate to use the phrase, but it was an academic exercise in looking at what is the population going to be? What's the waste going to be generated? What's in that waste stream? What are the components? And then what would it take to get 75% diversion with that volume of material that you're there? And so again, it's critical that we looked at all available technologies, but you'll see in the scenarios that I get to, we really focus on those that are proving they're working in other communities and we know that could be replicated here. And at the top, again, is the need for waste reduction and prevention. So eliminating the waste that's coming into your system that then we all are not responsible to manage is the top priority. Once it gets into our system and it's generated, there's still policies and programs that we could do that are cost effective to help reuse that waste and divert it out of the waste stream. And then when there aren't those opportunities for certain materials, we get into the various conversion processes that are out there and start to get into what types of facilities can best manage that component of the waste stream to maximize the beneficial use of it and achieve a good environmental outcome while still being cost effective, right? And so the conversion processes, to be a little bit oversimplistic, is kind of lump them into 3 buckets. You've got the biological, so think your composting, things that you are familiar with, but as well as anaerobic digestion is a growing field. It's a proven technology. It's working in other communities and in other countries. There's a lot of momentum with that, even within Florida. I believe the state is going through a permitting process right now for one new facility. And so I spoke to Department of Environmental Protection just a couple of weeks ago about that. And they're excited to kind of go through the regulatory permitting process to learn from that, because they know there's several companies that are actively looking to, target anaerobic digestion capacity within the state. Mechanical is more of your traditional sortation equipment. It's the way to think about it. So think your single stream material recovery facilities where there's lots of different components and machinery within that are targeting specific aspects of the waste stream to recover your various commodities, your cardboard, your fibers, your metals, and so forth. As well as like C&D, construction, demolition, recycling facilities would also typically rely on that mechanical aspect of how we physically take material out of a waste stream. thermal gets into not only the mass burn waste to energy, but also some of the more, I'd say, emerging technology with pyrolysis and those that, from our assessment, are not quite there yet. There are some demonstration projects, and there's some that have worked in very high regulatory environments with completely different cost structures than we have here. But really, our perspective is it's not proven to handle the volume that you would need. And then we've got the YW there. It's really for yard waste and the biochar facility that we did recommend. And I'll get into that, but all of our scenarios had to at least do one biochar facility at a smaller scale to handle some of the palm fronds and harder materials that can't be easily composted. And I'll say that Leon County in Florida has a pilot that they've been running that's going very well, successful. They're looking to ramp up to manage all of their yard waste in the year 2026 with the biochar. So it is a proven technology. I'll add that they've got significantly less yard waste than you all have, but it will be a component of our recommendations. Okay, so looking into the scenarios that are detailed in the task force white paper. And again, there's a tremendous amount of information in there. And so I encourage you to go back and kind of look through that. And so I won't get into all the differences between the scenarios, but based on our previous feedback and our assessment, we settled on scenario A, which is basically our existing status quo with enhancements. And I think the key thing to point out across all the scenarios, and as Daniel alluded to earlier, is there will still be a need for a disposal over this planning horizon. And so all of the scenarios included an additional landfill. It did not say where it would be sited, but that there will be a need for that disposal. It did also, all scenarios included the reliance on the existing South Broward Resource Recovery Facility to utilize that facility as intended. Again, no new waste energy facility is in scenario A, but it does rely on the existing usage of the facility that's here in the county already. Other synergies across that is all of them modeled increased education outreach spending and the impacts that would have over the planning horizon, and the need to really prioritize increased investment, as Chair Ryan alluded to earlier, as a starting point to get everyone on the same page to create that public awareness and momentum towards where the authority is going in the future. As part of that, all scenarios also had new drop-off recycling centers to increase that access that we talked about and to target some hard to recycle items. So think household hazardous waste. You can do tires and scrap metal and other things at these sites as well. And these sites can often be leveraged as an extension of your education outreach program. So people are coming to these sites to dispose of an item or to recycle an item. It's a great place to engage with the public there, have tabling events, distribute information, really leverage the customers that are coming through to help create more awareness and really distribute information to the public with that. All facilities also had the construction, demolition, recycling facilities that we mentioned. And so we'll state that these, again, were an academic exercise and looking at the year 2045 with all of the waste that will be needing to be managed at the time, that would be what was needed. However, currently there is existing C&D infrastructure that would be most practical and cost effective to try to partner through strategic procurements to get more material to go to those facilities, as well as using your policy levers, whether it be ordinances and regulations, to drive that diversion. However, it was something that was uniform across all the scenarios that you have to have some additional C&D capacity over the long term and to really focus on that waste stream. So some specifics of scenario A, it does look at the targeting of the curbside yard waste. So establishing harmonization of services and really having source separated clean yard waste at the curb is essential for you all to have a bigger bite out of that tonnage apple and to start to take that material to beneficial use. Scenario A envisions that material going to two organic campuses, we'll say. And within that, there would be windrow mulching activity, something very familiar with in Hillsborough County, and we were able to leverage and find private vendors that were willing to come to our sites and manage that material and find the markets. So something that can definitely be done and is being done in other areas of the state. Within that, there was the discussion of having a colorization process with that enhances your ability to market the material and get into some of the big box store distributions and other things like that as well. And again, the biochar that I mentioned would be a smaller subset of the throughput of that, but helps to manage some of the harder materials to manage, as well as provide a different marketing strategy for some of that material as well. So as part of the future needs assessment, Again, the white paper goes into great extensive detail on all of these facilities regarding, what they do, how they operate, what we would envision the desired capacity to be for your community, the acreage that would be needed, setbacks. And so the natural extension of that was to then go into, okay, well, where could these facilities potentially be sited within the community? No surprise to you all, but you're rapidly growing. There's not availability of a lot of land that's properly zoned and of the adequate size that's needed. However, we did go through that process and looking at each of the facilities that were there. What is the minimum acreage? What would be the residential setback that we would recommend from that? We did look at those facilities or parcels rather that are in county or municipal ownership, meaning that we have more immediate control over the ability to leverage those properties now. There very well may be private properties out there that could fit the bill, but we by no means control that currently right now, nor do we know what the price tag would be or how we would engage with those communities without going through a formal solicitation process with that. We also looked at making sure that it was cost effective in terms of how we route material and how we haul material. So if there was any parcels that were, over 5 miles from a collection arterial road, then those were excluded as well. And we'll go to the next slide, Daniel. So out of that, we really looked at hundreds of properties that were in the county that met that. And after going through that screening criteria, unfortunately, this is what we came up with, which is, a handful of facilities that could actually work with that. And so there's a great deal of detail again in the Task 6 white paper that gets into all of the criteria that was used to cite this and why it's relevant. But I think the key takeaway is that, there's not a lot of opportunities out there to leverage the existing properties we got. So that speaks to the potential to, potentially work with the private sector through strategic partnerships, public-private partnerships to potentially have them develop sites at some point on private property that they can more quickly and, obtain. So this is specific to the Alpha 250 site. I think the key thing here is a lot of you are very familiar with the history of the site, but if you focus on that blue outlined area, there's really only 7.85 acres from our research that is usable, that can be used to construct a solid waste facility of some type. And when you look at what's allowed there and of the acreage there, a public drop-off site could work, although that would still even require some zoning amendments with City of Pompano Beach. However, even though the site is smaller and not ideal to locate some of the facilities that would be needed in regards to the limited acreage there, we'd highly encourage the authority to look to retain that property. Again, land is not getting any cheaper. They're not making any more of it. There's a lot of opportunities that potentially could be used in the future with this site. In more immediate terms, it could be used for a temporary debris management site if you have a major hurricane. I know there's some existing sites within the county. However, from my experience, having recently been hit over in the Tampa Bay area, you can always have more room to properly manage disaster debris in the short term. The site could also potentially be leveraged to do smaller scale projects or demonstration projects, pilot projects and things to help build a use case for then expanding to something greater than that. And so we would just recommend that even though it's not an immediate solution and that a lot of facilities can't go there, it still has a lot of value to the authority, especially when you look to the long term.
Thank you, Travis. So I'm sure that you've got a clear sense that we are presented with some challenges. There are some constraints, but we prefer to look at it really as opportunities, right? We recognize we have to be clear-eyed about our current conditions. How do we make the most out of it? We know that we've got to create consensus and alignment amongst this body for the changes needed to achieve the master plan goals. Right? We're all in this and working together. We stand a much better chance of changing the paradigm. We know the importance of an effective communication strategy. We've presented to you best practices in terms of education and outreach, and at a prior executive committee meeting, a communication plan that's time delineated was presented to you. Again, this is a building process. We often talk internally about this authority is like building a ship as it's being pushed out to sea. It really is remarkable when we look back over the last year at how far that we've come, but we recognize we still have a long way to go. We want to leverage the economies of scale in part to secure the financial security. It is one of the success factors. Maximizing the use of the existing infrastructure. We cannot overstate that. We had a workshop specifically to have this conversation. I believe you all heard from the market. They want to be part of the solution. And in the short term, they absolutely must be, and will likely be in the long term as well. We want to harmonize the services across the authority. And again, through the communication plan and through some of the recommendations, we're presenting some tactics on how you can do that. And I think you all appreciate the value. And then we also have to continue to look at where and when new facilities will be built. And if we reach the conclusion that land is not available for the authority to do it themselves, that there are still other pathways to engage the private sector that has a different business model, and they have access to land in a different way than the authority does. So in terms of recommendations, there was an exhaustive table that was included in the master plan. Again, that pulls from all of the white papers that identified what are the actions, what are the recommendations that we hope that you all will adopt and move forward with a time frame, and we'll summarize those at the end. First and foremost is harmonizing the minimum curbside solid waste set out standards. That is not telling you how to collect the waste. That remains the purview of each of your communities. But I think intuitively you understand that if we continue to commingle materials at the curb, you're losing efficiency and opportunity. Once yard trash is co-collected with bulk trash, it is expensive and inefficient to then segregate it. So again, it's sending signals to the waste generators of these behavior changes. The change process is always messy, but by unifying around the vision, helping the communities to understand why they're being asked to make these changes will result in a much better day. Expanding access to single stream recycling is fundamentally important, and that can happen at the member level. Requiring that yard trash is recycled. That starts by setting it out at the curb properly so that it can be sent to a processing facility. It also sets the stage for integrating food waste at some point in the future. We've seen throughout the state of Florida and around the country the value of mandatory C&D recycling. We've given you lots of options of how you may want to do that, and we're going to have, I'm sure, further conversations as the committee digs into that. Developing additional residential drop-off centers, again, as Travis shared, we've got to meet people where they are. We've got to remove the barriers that result in decisions that are not in alignment with resource stewardship goals. And then we're going to be exploring food waste collection options and impacts. Again, there's no perfect solution. We're acutely aware that running another truck on your streets to collect food waste curbside will have impacts, but there are lots of steps that can be taken in the short term to give people access to food waste management at home or through private services. And then there's a host of supporting policies and actions that are recommended for you. In terms of education, outreach, and communication, we view this as an investment. We've heard the word many times, but it really is an investment in the success of the program. Think of it as a pump that needs to be primed. It needs to start now. I should say it has started, and it needs to be further supported and deployed for maximum benefit. As Travis mentioned, becoming the trusted voice to all stakeholders is critically important. I'm sure that we've all heard, I'm not going to recycle because it just ends up in a landfill. We've heard it from our surveying efforts. Same thing. I don't believe that our recyclable materials are being recovered. We have to break down those myths And we have some tactics for you to do that. We want to partner with a wide range of stakeholders. So we really started this project a year ago talking about the tent that exists, right? The early adopters are there, right? They're in the tent and we can hear their voices loudly. We need the biggest tent possible and bring people in. We want to utilize existing and emerging technology to both better engage with residents and deploy it across other aspects of the plan. We've got to be clear in the messaging with clear, achievable milestones and uniform reporting. And lastly, we want to leverage the facilities as outreach hubs in some of those tactics and strategies were presented in a white paper that looked at ways to extend that relationship. In terms of innovative technology adoption, there have to be overarching strategies for technology implementation where the authority is at the center of it. As I mentioned earlier, data is critically important and that can be converted to knowledge and leveraged. The market is shifting. The waste companies are already moving well into this space. I don't know if you all remember, but it used to be that garbage trucks were routed by map books with highlighted routes. We are long past that, and it allows for greater accountability and that you can answer concerns from your constituents. I wasn't picked up. These days, the trucks have the information to know exactly what was occurring at that time. And while the complainant may not want to hear that, the depth of that intel, it is real. Connecting data management systems is critically important, and we want to emphasize the importance of that integration. And while it has not been established yet, we do recommend establishing a technology needs committee to continue to research the information that has been provided in the master planning process and to stay current and to be a very important resource to the authority.
I'll just add to Daniel on that as well. A lot of that is focused on increasing customer service, but also the customer service user experience with that, making more responsive. But another big piece that we did mention was the enhanced safety for staff. So it's important to acknowledge the solid waste industry is still one of the more dangerous industries out there in the U.S. A lot of the new technology is increasing the safety of our staff, which is paramount, just something worth mentioning.
So we talked about the importance of capturing the organics. It really does present an incredible opportunity, but it has to be done right. It has to be messaged properly so that you're capitalizing on the opportunity, not creating a bigger mess. So there are requirements and regulatory underpinnings that should be developed, especially to change the way that the yard trash is viewed, managed, and then set the stage for further organic capture and beneficial use. And then working together between all of the ILA communities on the commitment, right? We want to continue to set audacious goals and develop the pathways to achieve. So I just want to recap scenario A, right? Some of the benefits are restoring recycling services to communities that don't currently have it, segregating curbside yard waste or yard trash. We can start warming the community up to food waste management at drop-off events. It's been a successful strategy that we've cited in some of our other white papers. Again, focusing on difficult to recycle materials or hazardous materials to keep them out of the waste stream. I'm sure we've all read articles about batteries causing downstream impacts at either recovery facilities or disposal facilities. Again, it's changing behavior, raising awareness. And while we've already received a lot of feedback about the collection frequency, we are simply giving a recommendation, and it's largely predicated on the mathematical consideration, right? What is set out at the curb requires a certain amount of volume. As we start to better manage the resources, the frequency of collection can be reduced. We're not saying it has to be reduced, right? You understand your communities better than any of us. We're not dictating how what the frequency of collection is, rather that there may be opportunities as we start to manage our waste stream as resources, there'll simply be less volume of waste that needs to be picked up. In terms of the additional facilities, again, we started with the academic exercise, looking 20 years out, 40 years out. What is the waste stream and how best to accomplish it? If you were to do it in isolation without utilizing the existing infrastructure, these are the kinds of facilities and the number of facilities that would be necessary. We're not there yet. And again, it comes back to the comment that was made by the public and I addressed at this time. If we don't keep our eye on the horizon, we may be missing opportunities, or we may be falling short in planning proactively for what the needs are going to be. We want to move away from a reactive approach and one that really does look forward. We recognize the goal was, how do we get to 75%? Well, there is no simple solution, right? We could waste energy our way out of it, right? It is a commercially proven volume reduction approach. But based on the conversations with the public and with this body, we don't believe that we need to start there. Let's utilize our existing infrastructure. Let's maximize engagement, participation, focus on the low-hanging fruit that we know is going to move the needle. And we believe that this will put us on the pathway to 75%.
I'll just add with scenario A, it really is the most cost effective and practical right now for you all to pursue, and it still provides the flexibility to pursue more advanced technologies and make bigger investments down the road. Unlike some of the other scenarios where you put all your eggs in that basket, for lack of a better word, and then you're on that path and you're set down that road. And once you make that level of investment, there's not really any going back. This enables you to kind of gather that consensus, harmonize services, get the public engaged in what you're doing, and still achieve meaningful results while giving you the flexibility to then pursue some of those options down the road if it makes sense given the time and place.
Well said. So I want to present some estimated facility costs. This was part of the exercise of looking at the future needs. And it's really just order of magnitude from a point in time in terms of if you were to build it yourself, finance it, what is the capital cost? What is the annual operating cost? What are the processing fees? And then what is the bottom line, right? There are credits associated with material sale and the like. It's pretty staggering, right? So to stand up an authority on the assumption that you're going to build what would essentially be a mature system is simply not cost effective, and we just don't recommend starting there. But this provides some context for consideration. So we wanted to share in a temporal time frame. Where are we today and where are we going? So we realize that this is presented for illustrative purposes. We are not foreshadowing any train network in Broward County, but we wanted to convey that this is a journey that we are on, and that there is a pathway to a successful outcome. There are a number of steps. You will notice that at key dates, it identifies beginning procurements of different facilities. That is not determined to be a facility that is owned by the authority. There are lots of delivery strategies that will be considered. But really, we have to start somewhere. And it starts with the development of policies, sort of deploying that communication program and strategy, and focusing on those low-hanging fruit. For those taking photographs, this will be available on the Solid Waste Authority website, presumably right after this. But thank you for your interest. But this lays out the path to getting to 75%, a unified system, and one that we can all be proud of, not just for this generation, but for future generations. So I started at the beginning of this. We talked about this. We want this to be action oriented. There's a lot that you can do in the short term. So the next steps, really within the next month. We're going to convene the public workshops. We'll revise and issue the final master plan. We're scheduled to have that wrapped up by the end of July. And then just continue engagement with ILA and non-ILA members. So we've had conversations with the executive director about meeting those communities where they are. Presentations like this one, shorter than this one, at public workshops or public meetings with electeds. Even better if it is a workshop where we can have a conversation also with the community. But again, that follows the values that we want this to be inclusive and transparent and no surprises. So once the master plan is adopted, it really transitions from strategy to tactics. That doesn't mean that we're not going to revisit the strategy, because it is not set in stone. It's dynamic. And I think you've all come to realize, if you didn't already, that solid waste management has a lot of moving parts. And it's not just the mechanics of it. There's a whole public policy and engagement side. We want to leverage the existing established new authority subcommittees. It's an incredibly powerful mechanism to inform the deliberations of this body, and then continue to support the development of legislation and policies, particularly around C&D management, yard trash, the flow control, and then harmonizing the materials management. We know that it's fundamentally important, absolutely critical to create and implement a sustainable financial plan while deploying also the communication plan, and then developing solicitations for the necessary facilities to manage the waste stream that we've identified as that low-hanging fruit that really will move the needle. And then beyond that,
Second, I just want to make sure we're not losing one of our governing board members. Okay, no, sure, coming back. All right, good. Just to let everybody know what we're going to do, as soon as the slides are done, I'm going to ask the executive committee to recess so that we can get to the governing board. There are two substantive issues. I appreciate that all the executive committee members have held their comments and questions on these slides. I'll come back to that, assuming that's the will of the executive committee. But we do have to accomplish two things before we lose anybody on our quorum. So I'm sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
The good news is we're done, right? So the work has commenced. I think we're in a good position. We know that we need more feedback from this body, from the general public, from the various interests that have already been engaged, and we hope we'll continue the engagement. But we're excited to refine and implement the strategy and get going on the tactical plan.
Okay, fantastic. What I'd like to do is make sure that we can get the governing board matters done. So as long as there's a will of the executive committee, can I have a motion to recess? Yeah, we'll need to get it back, but let's get a motion to recess before we start any cuts. Motion by member Rydell, seconded by member Bright Cruz. All in favor say aye. All right, so we're recessed to that. I'm going to convene now the governing board. Do we have a quorum? Is she coming back? All right. Yeah, but she's not here. All right, let's take a 2-minute recess. Probably can call it a biological break as well, right? So
Sounds good.
while we corral everybody, make sure don't go far because we got work to do.
Was that this when I was? When Steve was here?
Not when I was inside.
It was yard waste.
Nope. No, that's amazing. No, I haven't seen it.
This is already costed out and everything.
Great. Let's get it circulated. That's good news.
Well,
Let's get it around. I know, but I haven't seen it.
What?
You haven't sent me that much.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that. Okay. I don't know why I was thinking that was.
All right, let's try to get everybody back together. We still got some work to do. All right, let's start getting the members back to the tables and get organized. Mr. Cole, let us know when we have at the table the quorum for the governing board.
I might drop off mine. It looks like an egg McMuffin.
Did you DoorDash? Did you DoorDash it?
I don't know where it came. It arrived.
Okay.
Next time I grab it.
Yeah.
Maybe I can come and sit in on one of them. Please. Yeah.
Good too.
Let's get everybody in. I know Todd's out there trying to grab everyone. Better not. She said 1 minute. Member Shuham.
Hey, Daniel. Oh, sorry, Daniel. Hold on. I know. Where'd Yvonne go? Daniel, can we all get slides of that whole presentation? Can we get copies of that presentation for everybody? It's on the computer, okay. Yeah, let's make sure we all get it. A lot of good stuff on there that easily digestible.
I'm going to call to order the governing board meeting of May 21st, 2025. If you would, please call the roll.
Chair Ryan,
Present.
Vice Chair Fur,
Here.
Member Shuham, Member Glassman, Member Colburn.
Here.
All right. Member Mateo Bowen. Member Lewis. Member Horland. Member Drotsky. Member Dunn. Member Patterson. Member Mead.
Here.
Member Caggiano. Member Rydell.
Here.
Member Borgelin. Member Arnst. Member Thomas. Member Murphy Salmon.
Present.
Member Coran. Member AJ Ryan. Member Brunson. Member Newton.
Online.
Yeah. Member Stafford. Member Bright Cruz.
Here.
Member Morrison. Member Strauss. Member Rabianzi. Sorry about that. Member Tomlinson.
Mr. Cole, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
All right. Fantastic. First of all, public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on any matters before the governing board, please come forward or raise your hand. Okay.
Debbie Green, Southwest Ranches resident. Just in following up on what was present earlier, on the landfill, that's the location 00. It's should be stated as east of 27, not 75. And just in regards to that landfill and looking and diverting from others, I would just urge that we continue to use that landfill for hurricane debris. And then also maybe while you're diverting some of the yard debris, maybe that's a perfect place for that landfill to take that and divert it from others. And what was the other? Just in regards to how, if this authority or the county were to mandate that the cities needed to recycle in a certain way, compost, have separate the yard waste pickups from the other, I think that enables all the cities to go back to their waste hauls who they now have contracts with and not have to wait until that contract expires. It opens the door for them to go back to their current providers to add those additional pickups. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the comments. Anybody else wish to speak on any matters related to the governing board? All right. Close public comment. Do I have a motion on meeting minutes from December 20, 2024? Motion by Member Bowen, seconded by Member Rydell. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right. All right. Selection of mid-sized cities of replacement for alternate member to the executive committee. Mr. Cole.
Yes, under the ILA, the medium cities will be choosing a replacement for their alternate. So it's only the people from the medium cities that will be deciding. So you need to decide on one person. Your current representatives on the executive committee are Rydell, Mead, and Caggiano. So you need one other. The people that it could be would be Patterson, Borgelin, Arntz, Thomas, Salomon, and Coran. Not all of whom are here, but the only people that get to decide are going to be Patterson, Mead, Rydell, and Salomon, who are here. Is there anyone online from the medium cities? I couldn't tell. I don't believe so. Okay, so the four of you need to decide to nominate someone and second and choose a alternate.
Talking about alternate. We're only talking about an alternate now. Yes, Member Rydell.
Just to be clear, I thought we addressed this. And let me just ask Jamie. Apologize. Thank you. I thought we addressed this. Let me just be clear. I want to say 3 meetings ago, Jamie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. There was a motion for Israel and Parkland who opted out. And then I believe that we took action on Solomon Murphy to be the alternate.
Okay, it didn't show up in the minutes. So it must, but
I just.
Are you
Patterson lost
volunteering?
it.
Are you volunteering by clapping?
So I,
Maybe it wasn't official. I don't know. It wasn't in the minutes. So why don't we just
Yeah, we did.
nominate?
All
the
right, so let's
person
go ahead and do a motion. Who's the motion by? By member Mateo Bone, second
second,
by member Rydell. By the way,
Only-
only
only the
medium-sized cities can make
only-
this decision.
Right. And
All
they
right.
can only, they can only make the motion also.
Okay, only the motion.
So I'll
Sorry.
move. So move.
Okay, motion by member, seconded by member Rydell. All right, you have your nomination. The medium cities, go ahead and call the question on the medium cities that are here to vote on that. Member Rydell? Yes?
yes.
Member Mead?
Yes.
Member Bright Cruz, are you, not medium yet? All right, who else?
Yes.
Member? All right, that motion passes. Are we good? Okay. Next, extension of deadline to approve master plan and facilities amendment until August 16, 2026. Mr. Cole.
So under the ILA, there is a deadline to approve the master plan and the facilities amendment. And what the facilities amendment is an amendment to the ILA, and I'll describe that a little bit more in a minute. But the deadline is August 6th, and the effective date was August 16th of 2023. That's when the interlocal agreement became effective, which was the day after it was approved by a city to get us over the population threshold. Thank you, City of Hollywood. You were the last one who got us over, Carol. You were the city that got us over on August 15th. So August 16th, 2023 was the effective date. We had 18 months to do these, what they're called the formation conditions, which is the master plan and the facilities amendment. That was extended for 6 months by the executive committee, which was the maximum amount that the executive committee could do. So the current deadline is August 16th, 2025. This board has the authority to extend it for one more year until August 16th, 2026. And that is the maximum. That's as far as you can extend it. So under the ILA, August 16th, 2026 would be, assuming it passes today, that will be, I don't want to call it the drop dead date, but that's it. That's the deadline. Now, by that date, by currently August 16th, 25, if you vote to extend it, it would be August 16th, 2026. By that date, the governing board has to adopt the master plan. The master plan is adopted by the governing board. It's not adopted by the individual cities. But the governing board, when you adopt it, you are going to need the county's vote has to be yes. And in addition to that, the municipal members representing 2/3 of the total population of the municipal parties are going to have to approve that. So it was hard enough getting a quorum today. You're not only going to have a quorum for that meeting, you're going to have, assuming everyone votes yes, governing board members representing 2/3 of the population, which is almost 1.1 million. Today, just for your information, we're about 900,000. So we would have to have several additional members beyond you even here. And that's just for the master plan. The facilities amendment, what the idea of the facilities amendment is, and it was really pushed a lot by the county when we were doing the ILA, was to the extent we're having facilities, the county wanted to be sure that there would be this facilities amendment, which would set forth how these facilities are going to operate and how they're going to be handled. And specifically that the county would have the ability to use those facilities if the SWA is not using them, or if the county needs them to abide by their statutory obligations. In addition, the facilities amendment would have wind down provisions, which basically says what happens to any assets, which could be facilities, it could just be money, it could be office furniture, whatever the SWA has at the end. This would provide an explanation of what happens to it, the same with any liabilities of the SWA. So that facilities amendment also has to be approved by August 16th, 2026. But for that to be approved, it has to be approved, first it has to be approved by the governing board. And for the governing board to approve it, you need the county and you need 80% of the cities are going to have to approve that. And that's not just, that's just to approve it at this level. And then it has to go to all the cities, and all the cities have to approve it. And they're to be given 120 days. And we, so to get at least 80% of the by population, the city elected officials are going to have to approve it. And we have a provision that if a city does not take action within 120 days, or if they vote no, they're just out of the SWA. So if you go back 120 days, even from August 16, 2025, the current deadline, that would have been back in April. So it would already be too late. So it's kind of important that you vote yes on this. I don't want to tell you how to vote, but if you vote no, we can probably just all just go home. So you're gonna, so it's very, we need to extend it until next year. But the reason I went through all that is just to emphasize to you the importance of timing. I know August 2026 sounds like a long time away, and you're going to be voting to extend to that deadline, but it's really not. I mean, between now and April, you need to completely finish this master plan, and you have to do the facilities amendment. So there's a lot of work to be done. So what you'll need, Mr. Chair, is you're going to need a motion to extend the deadline for the master plan and the facilities amendment to August 16th, 2026.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cole. And I appreciate as well the timeline emphasis. The executive committee has been working rapidly. The presentation today, while long, does not allow us to take our foot off the gas at all on this, even if it's an electric vehicle. We need to keep moving forward rapidly, and I would suggest that when it comes to both adoption of the plan and the facilities amendment, we really need to be looking at this in the fall to give sufficient time for further input and to get this done. So I know the executive committee will continue that. The governing board members, I can assure you, we'll work hard on that. But do we have a motion to extend? Motion,
I would-
wait.
I would like to make that motion, but are we going to have discussion before or after? I just have to-
After there's a motion and a second.
Motion.
All right, motion by, and a second by Shuham. All right, discussion. Go ahead, member.
Thank you. You were saying that we're past that 120 or below that 120 days. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you don't extend it for the year, that is correct.
Right. So what I would like to see is that timeline after today, so that we know as we go forward what exactly we're waiting for. When do we expect it to come before the city of Miramar and all the other municipalities and so forth? That's really my only comment on this, other than to say that I just went for a phone call. I was coming back.
But you were so important that we couldn't start without you, so.
This is my first meeting. I did not realize
How
up
important you are?
until yesterday, because I really have a full schedule today. And up until yesterday, that it was actually happening today. And I made every effort to come. I do think that we've got to really reach out to the other members and let them know how important it is when we have something that important. But it's really good to feel so important.
Yes, okay. Well, we think you're important, and that's all that matters. All right, yes, so we'll make sure that the outline, what I would say to the governing board members, you should suspect and expect that there'll be at least one governing board meeting in the fall, probably late fall, and another one in March before the April deadline. So be prepared for another lengthy meeting somewhere in that time frame. Fair? Member Rydell.
This is to speak. Judge Chair, this is to speak not on the motion, but on the previous item. Master plan.
That's going to be by the executive committee. We'll come back to that.
No, I understand that. That's why I was raised. It was incorrect raising of the name tag.
Understood. All right. Any further comments on the motion before we adjourn the governing board meeting and then go to comments? And I have all of your names written down who had their cards up, so don't worry, you're saved.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm just
Member
wondering
Burns.
if we need to get these governing board meetings on the calendar now, so we can get the advertising up. People put them on their calendars and let's.
I agree.
Here's what I would suggest. Let's have the executive director do a survey of dates in early October. Let's get through budget. It's always hard for folks in September. for early October and then for either late February, or early March. Is that fair? It's a great point you raised, Member Bright Cruz. I don't think we'll be able to do it. As pointed out, we need to emphasize to the other members, we can get stalled if we don't have everybody here. Member Dunn.
Yes, and in doing that survey, Todd, if we could just be mindful of like Florida League of Cities and National League of Cities, because I believe that's like March-ish, and a lot of us travel for those.
Okay, fair point.
Okay, if I can just mention one, the governing board is going to have to approve the budget for next year. And normally you do that before October 1, which starts the fiscal year.
All right, so let's plan on September then. It's just hard in the budget season to get appearance, but go ahead and do a survey then for mid-September. It's usually when most folks are in their second budget, but let's see what we can do.
Any city meets on Fridays.
Let's hope not. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, it passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Member Rydell, seconded by Member Horland. All in favor of adjourning the governing board, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, governing board members. I hope all of you will be able to stay. We'll now reconvene the executive committee meeting, May 21, 2025. Daniel, as I understand it, your presentation is complete at this point? Okay. All right, so we'll move to member questions and comments. I have Member Mateo Bowen, then Member Rydell, Member Shuham, and then Member Dunn, and then obviously everybody else. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you so much for your presentation and all of your hard work. My comments are really geared towards us as a governing body. I really want us, as we continue to finalize our final draft, to think about some key scenarios and sections that I think that we need to pay close attention to. First and foremost, I know we all are very hopeful for a zero waste lens, but unfortunately, I think that's very optimistic. And I think that we should be striving for a zero landfill direction, being that many of us are still trying to work through our recycling issues. As a city who went away, we removed recycling because of the high contamination rate, then came back when I was on the commission and fought for it. We spent extensive amount of dollars around changing behavior. And I know we have a heavy reliance on behavioral change in majority of our scenarios, but I don't see the dollars that match that. And so in order for us to really change behavior, there has to be a large amount of money and investment in that. And I want to see the dollar signs in the master plan on how we're going to get there. So just mapping out the scenarios is not enough for me or my colleagues. We want to know how much we have to invest financially and making sure we're transparent when we're mapping that out. We are very transparent during our budget cycle. And so with that being said, I really want to pose the challenges our city faced with marketing and really shifting for behavioral change. It took us money, incentives, and making sure that our folks understood the importance of recycling. And to get there, again, it costs a lot of money. And so that is something I want implemented in our master plan. Follow up around the education and outreach piece. If we want it to be done well, I really want us to look into some case studies where it was done well. I know Portland, Oregon has a very successful outreach and education plan that they've been able to really change their course of recycling and decreasing their contamination rate. And that is not something that is emphasized in our master plan. We say it, but we don't have concrete roadmaps to get there. And I think that is something that is missing from our master plan. And to that point, where it worked, how it worked, and how we're going to get there. I also want to speak on scenario one. I would recommend that Coral Springs is in a very good position to be a pilot for that because we are doing it. We have a waste transfer station. We have removed our organics from our garbage, trash. We have an extensive outreach program where we are doing outreach programming at least 2 to 3 times a month, whether that's composting, our hazardous waste, our shred-a-thon, and directing folks to our waste transfer station. The only challenge that we face is the segregation of yard debris and bulk, and that is a county-wide issue. And so I think, again, we would be a great model for this pilot scenario and see what works and what doesn't work. And we welcome you all to come and visit our waste transfer station. I also want to speak to the material recovery facilities. There is an assumption made that these facilities can handle real world contamination rates without excessive charges for contamination. That's not realistic. Our city is at a 20-30% contamination rate, and we absorb those contamination fees. A lot of these cities here may not be able to absorb that. So we have to have a real conversation again about finances. And I know when we began having these conversations years ago, when we started talking about finances, that's when people peeled away. And then everything went away, and then now we're back at rebuilding a solid waste authority. So I think we really have to be transparent about how much people have to invest each city. And if cities cannot invest financially, what are they left to do? So we have to really have that conversation on the front end as we're building the ship and creating this master plan. I also want to speak to our waste to energy facilities. I know this is something that folks frowned upon. I did a presentation and showed a model that really worked. I think that if we are able, we can't move forward with addressing our disposal issue without having a waste to energy. We're just not there. And so what does that mean for our current waste to energy facility? Are we going to invest in enhancement? Are we going to bring in new technologies? And then again, I see a price tag. What is that going to cost us? And then what really want to speak to our scenario around harmonization of services. That's not realistic for my city. Being that if we are suggesting a regional hauler agreement, this does not allow my city to provide the level of service we want to provide and addressing customer service issues. We just entered an agreement, and if we would harmonize our services, what does that mean to folks who've already came into an agreement? It puts us in a situation. And then, hold on, I'm going through my list here. Talked about education, talked about waste to energy. I think that's all for me. So I'm happy to continue having these conversations with my colleagues. I think my colleagues specifically want to workshop our master plan. So moving forward, if you can give us at least some leeway, at least a week or two, we're having a workshop tonight, and this is something that could have been an agenda item, me reporting back on what we discussed today, but because we're having this conversation later on and the master plan wasn't given to us till earlier this week, my colleagues did not have a chance to take a closer look at it. So I'm not sure how we are able to get this information out to us earlier, but it would be much appreciated. I know many of us take some time to study and really make sure we digest this information to come prepared to these meetings. But again, I thank you for your efforts and everybody for their contribution to this work. That's all for me, Mr.
Right,
Chair.
thank you. The 2 points. So I want to get a clarification from Daniel on the harmonization of services. As I understand it, you did not contemplate and has not been part of your task to contemplate harmonizing hauling agreements.
Correct.
Rather harmonizing perhaps delivery of commodities, where they're expected to go, what the policies are surrounding those commodities, for instance, separation of yard waste and bulk, but not interfering in SWG and SWA has been consistent in saying we're not weighing in on individual municipal collection agreements, correct? Okay. So we have to just be, I think it's a really good point that's raised because there are colleagues of ours in the county who will reflexively respond if it appears we're interfering with their hauling agreements. That's never been on the table. That's not what's meant by it, but let's make sure we're clarifying that. Second, on the timing, I know that Daniel, you delivered the draft master plan when expected. We had this meeting set. We expected that we'd have about a week, a little longer than we normally have. Certainly for future workshops that any individual municipalities have, we can try to accommodate. But this was set for a while that we expected it to be the first week of May, roughly, that we would get it. So as that goes forward, though, on the workshop, it's going to be important that you get the support from the SWA, the executive director. So for individual municipalities that are going to workshop the master plan or have discussions on it, we should try to coordinate with the executive director and to the extent possible with Daniel. Okay. Member Rydell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what we have before us is scholarly and conservative, not inspirational and inventive. I think you guys did a great job putting together data and making safe, politically safe, community safe recommendations. I don't agree with some of them, and I'm going to go through them briefly now. And I think there needs to be, on your behalf, respectively, consensus on a waste to energy facility in this room today, in terms of who thinks there's going to be a need for one, who thinks there isn't going to be a need for one, because it seems that there's a glaring application in not only obviously the white papers, but in what you're presenting today, that we're going to use the current facility. I don't think that's sufficient. I think Beam could remember these minutes right now, because I actually completely agree with you with your introductory remarks. That doesn't happen in these meetings, just so everyone's aware. So I actually completely agree with you that there will be a need. I think member Mateer Bowen did an inventive and thoughtful presentation on what's going on in Europe and how good models can be, that there has to be this component in some capacity. I believe that. I understand there's a huge community sentiment against it. And my neighbor that I'm sitting next to, I'm sure will speak, and he doesn't have a community sentiment. There seems to be this political elephant in the room that we don't want it. That's not realistic in a 40-year plan in this county, especially with the recommendations that you're making today that don't take effect for almost a decade. So my staff, who's here with me, needs to reactivate now for the now, because that's also what I believe is lacking of, while you make very succinct, effective recommendations, there's nothing for the now, right now, what I could be doing. And that has to be expected. And regarding landfilling, you're making recommendations that we still need a landfill, which we all agree on. I just don't think Monarch Hill should have been getting taller, but we're not going to rehash that. But if the answer is you're going to need a landfill, there's not clear direction on that. Are we going to buy 700 acres in Central Florida that the county's going to buy, or the Solid Waste Authority is going to buy, and we're going to rail it up? I don't know what that looks like. And I think there needs to be direction and ultimately a master plan of what that is. And regarding the assets that we have, I'm a little, I have a little lack of understanding, because right now, and again, the county has the ability of purchasing 26 acres that they just replatted next to Monarch Hill. That's not addressed in here. And I understand that's, Beam has made it clear that whether the county's going to purchase that land or not, that's 26 acres of zoned property that could check any of the boxes of a potential future asset. And again, Beam, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's ludicrous to me that Broward County doesn't want to purchase land. City of Coconut Creek just bought 10 more acres for development purposes. The Margate CRA, I just read a news story, is purchasing land. And I think all of us as municipalities, if we have the ability to purchase land, buy the land. You said it in your own presentation today. We need to purchase land. And I think we all are missing the mark if we're not telling Broward County to buy this land, whether it's for another waste to energy generation site. 26 acres is a significant amount of a asset that the county could utilize. And if the county doesn't want to, they can always sell it back to Waste Management. But the fact is, there's a time clock ticking every day for 26 acres that applies directly to this. And 3 different waste to energy private industries would be interested in coming in a public-private partnership, which we don't address either. And I think there needs to be that, we need to address that. It is a monster elephant in this room for the future needs of Broward County. I have one question, if I may, Mr. Chair, just to ask. Who gave you I guess, the legal position for Alpha 250? Because you make some legal conclusions in it. Was Jamie involved in that, or is that just the interpretation of the Pompano Beach codes of what can go there, what can't?
You mean the issue of whether it's 7.85 acres usable?
So ultimately, how I view this is we look at Alpha 250, that there's very little we could do there, right? Is that a fair assessment to both? You're both shaking your head, so I'm going to assume the answer is yes. I'm just curious who gave that legal conclusion, and if it was a lawyer that is specializing in land use in terms of the potential use of that property, or it's you guys as engineers, consultants who are making that classification. You see what my question is?
Yeah. So we applied screening criteria. We looked at underlying zoning, and we specifically looked at the parcel that is under authority control. So not a legal opinion, but we looked at the underlying land use and applied the screening criteria, exclusionary criteria, to reach our conclusion.
Okay, so you're looking at it from strictly a technical standpoint, with the understanding that I believe, and again, I think there should be, at least prior to final draft, a meeting with Mr. Cole specifically to see what can also legally be done with that land with slight modifications. Because I think in your presentation, I think it's slightly limited, and that's just my own professional opinion, understanding land use and the ability of doing certain things, especially with Pompano's code. Pompano actually has, we don't have a member here, a very, very comprehensive code specifically with these, more than I think any other city in the county. So they're really ahead of the game, and I think you know that. But I'm curious to see how legally what could be implemented on Alpha 250, because again, that's a resource, that's an asset, and that's an opportunity. Chair, and the thing I just really want to leave with is, I think we also need to reconsider when we look at the asset map, I said this during the initial workshop on that, the calculation of how we're logging those assets, because the truth is, and somebody had said this to me that when I was talking about this plan, we may be missing the mark because there may be smaller assets, smaller properties that in conjunction could solve a problem that just didn't meet your initial criteria. So I think it's worth a changing of the metrics, because I think that map gets bigger, and when those different pieces work together, it could be used to solve a problem that we may not be seeing in this room. So that's my initial comments. I do firmly believe that before we break today, there needs to be some consensus on waste to energy, landfilling. Like, we need that direction in this paper. And again, I appreciate Mr. Barnes, your qualification of saying, hey, we don't want to overcommit to something today. And I get that, and I appreciate it. It's the cheapest way to do it, but we do need to make some commitments, because all of us need, in our municipal capacities, I got to go back to my city. I got to report to my commission tomorrow night. And I got to tell them what not only happened today, but now I got to have my staff get creative in how to start moving this forward. Where I think you knocked it out of the park. See, I usually start with the good, but we'll end with the good. Your communications, your education, that concept, that white paper, and how you tie it in is absolutely brilliant, absolutely correct. And I think member Mater Bowen with a little cheer from member Dunn about the fiscal aspect of it is right on. And I think the two of you have been hammering this education component, much like all of us. I fully am supportive of that. So those are my comments that I think we need to hammer down prior to final. Thank you.
All right. One of the challenges from the master plan was there might be lots of private property out there that could be usable, and that wasn't within your scope, and is more challenging to even consider. But what Member Rydell points out is there certainly could be properties within the municipal or county inventory that, while not big enough, could be assembled with neighboring parcels to achieve. I'm not sure how we get to that analysis. It's just a workshop today. I'd like you to give that some thought, because I think the point's well taken in that regard. With respect to whether or not we can reach consensus here today, that would be great. It certainly was part of my opening comments, but this is a workshop. It may be that it's at the next executive committee meeting that we are really forced into taking those positions. We're going to be really close to these recommendations now. So I leave it to the will of the executive committee in this workshop But I would just be, if we don't get to, because we can't have a formal vote, but if we don't get to an absolute consensus, we should speak on this. If we don't get to a consensus, it's going to happen at the next meeting. That's just the reality. Travis, did you want to add? Certainly.
Okay, so.
And then Member Shuham.
Sure, yeah. So I'll just speak to the educational cost of that. We do detail some of that in the Task 8 white paper. And so the recycling partnership, they're, I don't know if you are familiar with them, based out of DC. They're funded by the big brands that are producing a lot of the waste packaging materials, and they fund strategic research and strategic investments in communities. Sarasota County was a big recipient of it over the Gulf Coast. But with that, they've done a lot of research into what does drive behavior change, and they've got a lot of their own white papers and such to serve as good resources with that. They recommend $3 to $5 per household just to address recycling contamination as an issue. And if you're looking at broader new program rollout and the other things that we're talking about, they recommend $10 per household. So again, substantial cost. You're correct in thinking that we got to fund that in some way, but that is detailed a little bit in the white paper. And that's the ballpark number that you can think about, anywhere from $3 to $10 per household, depending on how robust you want it to be and how many different changes in service levels you're doing at a given point in time. And there's some case studies also listed within that white paper. And as part of my firm's expertise, that's the bread and butter of what we do. We only focus on waste diversion. We don't do really landfill waste to energy work. And so we're happy to come back in further discussions with the committee to really go through and look at exactly what's working, not only here in Florida, but also elsewhere. We did some work in City of Lakeland that had really good results, as an example, right here in Florida. So there's some good examples that we can pull from. But you're right, it can be costly to do it correctly. And those are some of the ballpark numbers that you can look at with that. Looking at the contamination threshold that you mentioned, can a new material recovery facility in a single stream recycling facility handle that level of inbound contamination? Part of my previous job, I looked for multiple years at doing a county-owned material recovery facility before ultimately recommending going the private route for cost effectiveness. And in extensive conversations with most all the major players, the newer facilities are being built to handle about that 30% inbound contamination threshold. They would prefer it to be much less than that, obviously, and we should all strive for that for a variety of reasons, whether it's increased safety for the workers in the facility, increased costs, preventing fires and other things that can be catastrophic. But they are building those facilities to be able to handle that level of contamination. University of Florida did a study a couple of years ago, and it found that the state average is about 25%. So the industry is aware of this. It's a problem. They'd like to see it, move in the right direction. However, the newer large-scale facilities are developing newer technology that can handle that level. We just wouldn't want to see it creep any higher than that.
Yeah, but to Member Mateo-Bone's point, what we don't want is the industry preparing us that anything over 10% means we should be surcharged because it becomes very expensive when they're able to handle up to 25%. So we need to work using our, again, both political and flow control power to make sure we're driving that. Because as I look at the contamination rate charges that exist, they're assuming at 10%, and anything over that we're absorbing. And so that may not be industry standard. So it's something to work forward to.
I think that speaks to the need to work collaboratively to really get your materials together, that economies of scale, because each individual city, when you go out to procure services, you don't have as much tons. They're easier to have more influence over that procurement process, we'll say. But others in the state have been able to get where that's the minimum level where you're not rejecting anything less than 30%.
Thank you for bringing up the cost estimate. My remarks were in regards to who in this room is going to pay for it. So yes, we are going to invest in education, but where is that coming from? Is that coming from our general fund? Is each city going to put in for that? Is it coming from the county? Which we try to.
Was that a motion to have the county pay for everything?
That we volunteer quite often. So it just
Never
want
gets
some
old.
creative ways on how we're going to supplement that funding for our education component, because a lot of our cities here are trying to dig deep. We're in budget season and we're thinking about what line items we have to cut out of our budget based on the economic situation that we're in right now. So that is a thought. And we are really trying to figure out how we're going to pay for this. And when we start talking about finances, that's when people begin to peel off. And that's not something I want to see. We've come so far.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Member Shuham.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first, I want to thank you so much for the hard work and effort that's gone into this. It's clearly just a massive undertaking. And I think that you've done an excellent job presenting this to us today. Many of my comments have been made already, but I just really want to start with some fundamental questions, really for me. I don't know if others have shared this or have these thoughts, but when I look at the report, the first thing that we really focus on, no pun intended, we zero in on zero waste. And when we look at that inverted pyramid, we see that energy recovery is 2 levels above landfills. And yet, in the recommendations, we're recommending additional landfills. And so when I read this, that just hit me as a conflict. That on the one hand, you're relying very much on the aspirational goals of zero waste and the reverse pyramid, but yet the recommendation is additional landfill. So and I'll ask both of my questions and then give you a moment to address that. But that to me was like a fundamental issue that I had. The other, excuse me, relates very much to the existing waste energy facility. In the report, you have that facility went into use in 1991. But what I didn't find in the report was the typical lifespan for a facility like that. So I went to Dr. Google myself, and I found at least two reports that talk about the typical lifespan for waste energy facilities built in the 90s is 20 to 30 years. So we're past that. So my question is, in scenario A and in the, I guess, enhanced scenario A, when you go from 62% to or the hopefulness of 73%, are you including in that the waste to energy recyclable credit? And if so, how, if that facility only has, it's past its useful life? So those are really my two questions. And then just a comment that I'll make before I'm anxious to hear, and that is, we talk about other countries. And I'm a blessed person. I've gotten to travel to some of these places and just got back actually from Amsterdam, where on pretty much every corner you see a recycling situation with 6 or 7 openings, clear glass, color glass. That's one goal that we could have. The other is Japan, where there are no trash cans, right? And so I think that this is something very, very fundamental that as a group we need to think about. Is it our thought that we are going to encourage various streams of recycling in all of our public spaces? Or is the long-term goal more of a complete cultural shift like you see in Japan, where no one would ever dream of not retaining their own garbage? They don't create garbage in Japan, first of all. That's their first effort. But if they do, if they have an apple core, whatever they have, they take home with them. And when you're there, if you're a municipal official, what will strike you is how much money they are saving on public works, because no one is picking up garbage. There's no garbage trucks except going to the residences. So I just throw that out there as something for us to think about. Are we going for the European model where there's tons of recycling in public space? Or are we going for a more, what I'll just call a Japanese model, where people are not throwing things away? And both of these will take decades of education and cultural shift. So that's not really, the first two are my questions. One, why we are looking at additional landfills when our own zero waste objective is contrary to that. And secondly, how are you including the existing facility when it's past its useful life?
Daniel.
I wanted to start with my aspirational goal to go to Japan.
Yeah, you should. You'll be blown away.
To answer your question on the landfill, what is clear is that there are certain waste stream components that have no value, or they fall out of one of the upstream processes and require disposal. So no matter what we do today, there is no away for garbage. The ultimate repository will be a landfill. So that is a constant need now and for the foreseeable future. So zero waste, as I mentioned earlier, is not a series of facilities. It's a design philosophy that embodies all of our decisions and the policies, the legislative framework, and behaviors. And I think if we look around the room, the vast majority of us are willing to make those personal positive decisions to purchase less, to manage better, and minimize our footprint in our communities. Our goal is to expand that tent, to get others to buy into that approach, that there is a common good, there is a shared community that we all impact. That's the behavior change that we're talking about. It is not easy. I'm going to flip over to your question about waste to energy. We don't believe that waste to energy and recycling are incompatible, but in a sense, it's hitting an easy button that is very expensive. But even with waste energy, you still have a need for a landfill. So these are the tensions, right? If it were simple, it wouldn't have taken us this long to do the analysis and put the pieces together. It is complex. There are polarities. There's a lot of tensions. There's cost effectiveness that we keep top of mind, environmental justice, right? All of the elements that we've been talking about over the last year. It's complicated. So I understand your point. Why have disposal? The goal is to minimize waste on the front end. Think of it as a pipe. And at the end of the pipe is a landfill. We want to take as much out of the pipe before it ever we want to prevent as much as possible from getting into the pipe and then peeling off what we can for beneficial use before it gets to the end of the pipe.
Okay, but to get to you want to have the absolute minimum going to a landfill. And you also want to maximize what your credits are for recycling. And my second question was, in these calculations, the existing facility, is it being counted in that 62% leading to 73%? Is it being counted at its current capacity? And if so, how can you look at it over the lifespan of this master plan when we know it's past its useful life, basically?
Yeah, we can speak to that. So real briefly on the need for a landfill as well, and having managed one previously, there's all types of things that we're not thinking about that we'll still need to: boats, RVs, bulky waste, mattresses, things that are still hard to even send through a waste to energy facility without a lot of pre-processing. And so just there's things in there that have to go to disposal with existing technology right now. And just there's a slide we have that's called the reality of recovery. I think we covered it in one of the previous workshops that kind of speaks to some of the limitations that we've got with that. But to Daniel's point, waste to energy is proven, it's effective, very expensive, politically contentious. No one wants one in their backyard. And so it's one of those things where it's easier in that it doesn't require as much behavior change, right? Residents are putting their garbage at the curb, businesses are putting their garbage in the dumpster, and then it's like, let us at the waste energy facility properly manage that to recover as much value as you can. However, extremely controversial for a lot of reasons that we've discussed, right? So just add to that. Regarding the modeling on the scenarios, all 5 scenarios did include the existing capacity of the South Broward Resource Recovery Facility as being utilized to achieve those numbers that you saw.
Throughout the duration.
All 5 of them, had that over the planning horizon to 2045. And so I'll add with that, it's been publicly announced. I don't think the deal is through yet, but that there's been the sale of that property with a new player potentially acquiring that if it goes through, which is FCC Environmental. They run waste energy facilities abroad. They are expanding their footprint rapidly in the U.S. in regards to their collection contracts and have done good work for other Florida municipalities. And so the thought would be that a player of that size and scale and experience acquiring that property, that they would look to reinvest in it. And these facilities, although there is a maximum life, so to speak, a lot of the components can be continuously upgraded and maintained. And so it speaks to, you know, the inner operations of that facility, how well they maintain it, how good they procure their spare parts, and all the aspects of how you run a waste energy facility. So whether that is feasible or is not feasible, again, they're not a county-owned asset, privately owned, so we can't stipulate or speculate rather on exactly what they're going to do, but there are multiple municipal-owned waste energy facilities that have recently gone through retrofits and reinvestments, Pinellas County, Pasco County now. And so there is a pathway to continue to reinvest in them to keep that capacity. Again, whether the reality of that over a 40-year planning horizon, it's an assumption that we had to make in looking through it right now, but all 5 scenarios did include it. That's what I want to
Hang
say.
on one second.
Just a
Co-chair
quick,
from
just a
county.
quick clarification
Sure.
on that. They're acquiring the facility, not the property. Big difference on that.
Yeah, they're acquiring the facility that we all paid for over 40 years and then handed the keys over. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
And I guess just to tie all of that up, what I would find helpful, to maybe another appendix or something in the report would be to see, like a timeline, and maybe it's in there, but I didn't see it, of what has to happen, like every 5 years, every 10 years, not only with respect to the physical nature of reduction and recycling and all of these other things, but the cultural shifts as well, like what should be happening at milestones. And if that had been here, you know, I think all of us would have been able to see what we've just discussed. You know what I'm saying? So I think that might be helpful for us to see what has to happen when for these goals to be obtained.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, member Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. First, I want to say I really appreciate that slide that you had that says where we are now at 35% and where we want to go at 75%. There's a lot of pages, so I could have missed it. I think it would be helpful if you have the data to show where cities are now. And then so that way we can see, I can see from my community, you know, well, are we 32% or maybe we're at 5%, right? I think it's important for each city to kind of have a benchmark of where they are and where we're trying to move as a county. Secondly, I appreciated the information around the policies for mandatory recycling. I'm curious if you guys took a look to see if we are preempted. Unfortunately, the Florida legislature loves to preempt local government. And so I think that's something in your research that you should take in consideration if you haven't already. And then the other thing too, I want to amplify, and member Colburn will perhaps be able to identify with this since she chairs the MPO. 130,000 Broward County residents are transit dependent. They take Broward County Transit every weekday. And in my city, 17% of my residents do not have a car and they walk to wherever they need to go. So they're transit dependent, right? And so this idea about having drop-off stations for people to take their recycling will not work for these Broward County residents, and it certainly will not work for all of my residents. So as you're thinking through solutions, I really encourage you to look through multiple lenses, equity being an important one, and to consider, well, if you are transit dependent, how on earth would you then drop off your recycling, right? I liked what a member Shuhan talked about perhaps creating space or a system for municipalities and other authorities like Broward County Public Schools to have recycling bins everywhere. So then it becomes easier and more of an attainable possibility for those of us who are from resource-strapped communities. And to member Mateer Bowen's point in regards to executing some of these strategies, I would like to see perhaps what communities who are resource strapped could do on a short term in order to execute some of these recommendations, what the real opportunity cost would be, and also if there are opportunities to augment these financial burdens through federal, state, or private donor possibilities. So are there a series of grants that we could work collaboratively to apply for? Taking the similar model to what the MPO does, we work together as a region, find the money and able to fund some of that. And then my other point is to Member Shuham's point, when she was sharing her questions, what came to me was vision. And again, putting my marketing hat on, right? This is a very intense document. And I think we have to be able to clearly articulate the vision